This battle, Lear claims, left us bereft of our own facilities and some of our best scientists. Ever since, we have attempted to create a counterforce to meet the alien challenge. The Strategic Defense Initiative was one such scheme. SDI, regardless of what you hear, was completed 2 years ago. That was to shoot down incoming saucers. The mistake was that we thought they were coming inbound. In fact, they were already here. They were in underground bases all over the place. It seems that the aliens had constructed many such bases without our knowledge, where they conduct heinous genetic experiments on animals, human beings, and improvised creatures of their own devising. In battle, even in a conflict as unusual as the Dulce Wars, there are bound to be prisoners of war or POWs. In his leading-edge report, researcher Vel Valerian revealed the following. Dulce lab technician held. In early November 1988, we received word that the scientist's son of BM is now being held in the underground facility at Fort Wayne, Colorado. The underground base is located in southwestern Colorado near the Ute Mountains. The son apparently worked at the genetics lab under Archuleta Mesa near Dulce, New Mexico, and finally grew disgusted with what he was observing. Subsequent probes into the retention of this person have yielded several interesting project names. His father, BM, apparently encountered 2 Nordic-appearing men in Pomona, California on the 22nd of October '88. Note, the Ute Mountain Indian Reservation border, which superimposes the southern border of Colorado, lies only a relatively few miles north of the Archuleta Plateau. It extends from that point westward along the border to the Four Corners area. Just across the border in Utah another branch facility apparently exists, according to John Lear, where another Dulce scientist is reportedly being held. Lear spoke with the father of this young scientist, referring to the father only as Mr. K, and attempted to locate the exact position of the base. Lear stated, "The son, whose father I met and who passed away several years ago, is apparently being held in a base near or around Sleeping Ute Mountain. Sleeping Ute Mountain is in the extreme southeast part of Utah, near the Four Corners area on the Ute Reservation, south of Utah Highway 666, which also runs through Colorado and down through New Mexico." Branton. I don't remember how I came by that information, but it had to do with some research I was conducting in a search for the Project Blue Light base near Dolores, which I never found. In regards to Utah, there have been rumors of New World Order bases being constructed below southeastern Utah with containment facilities where dissidents are intended to be apprehended underground when and if the New World Order takes control of the United States. There are reportedly numerous such underground containment facilities throughout North America. Though the United States military is not the only force that has become involved with the war against the Greys. One of the major underground human forces who are very upset at the Greys over their violation of territorial agreements and abuses and atrocities that have been committed against various interplanetary human colonies, includes certain segments of the Telosian-Agardie Alliance, as well as some of their Syrian allies who are against the Greys. The following information was sent to a Utah researcher by Juliet Sweet, a personal friend of Sharula Dux, who is reportedly an Agartian princess from Telos, the city complex below Mount Shasta. The central metroplex of Telos is said to consist of a multi-leveled complex over 5 miles deep and at least 20 miles in circumference, which extends outward to suburban colonial systems beyond. According to Sharula, Telos has subterranean connections via tube shuttles to at least 100 other subterranean cities below North America as well as cities below South America, such as the elite city of Pasai below the Mato Grosso region of Brazil. Many of these cities are maintained by ancient, native, North, South and Central Americans. The following letter was dated February 7, 1993. Last month I had your disc transcribed and read your materials in their entirety. Very interesting, and full of well-cited facts. I appreciate your sense of groundedness when presenting your ideas. I am not familiar with the Saurian race, nor have I heard mention of them from Sharula or Adama. The Greys do come up from time to time, and what has been communicated by the Telosian hierarchy is that they are indeed being asked, forcibly if necessary, to leave. The ousting process has been active for the last year or so, and Adama has indicated that Los Alamos will be one of the last areas to clear out. There has been some Star Wars type of conflicts of late, but the Telosian masters tell us not to worry about it, that they have things well in hand. Sharula's age is actual at 267 years. Although for surface ID purposes, she says she was born in 1951. It helps where Social Security and passport purposes are concerned. You might want to update your materials to reflect your actual age. Note, during one lecture, Sharula was asked what the Telosians were doing about the problem with the Greys. Sharula stated that the Telosian Agharti silver fleets had confronted the Greys and told them to cease their abusive activities on this planet, to which the Greys responded that they have the right to continue their activities since the U.S. government has authorized their activities on Earth and in America. Are the Greys referring to the Nazi-backed CIA-NSA secret government which has infiltrated America through murder and manipulation, and established the alien interaction projects without congressional consent? It's as if these green-blooded, pencil-necked, melon-headed, blood-sucking parasites, who break treaties, violate human will, permanently abduct and even kill humans for scientific or sustenance purposes, lie and deceive, disregard non-intervention ethics, destroy animals and property, manipulate the thoughts of the masses and their leaders against their conscious knowledge, ruin human lives on mental, emotional, physical levels, and literally feed off of human life including that of our children, have any place to give such excuses? Chapter 15. Dulce, an ancient terminal to inner and outer space. Researcher Paris Flamand gives a description of what appears to be the Dulce underground base network, as described by UFO researcher James Moseley. The intimations of strange pressure groups, purportedly intent upon obscuring the true meaning of flying saucers, began arising in the early 1950s, the most famous of these being the Three Men in Black and the Silence Conspiracy, which Major Kehoe and others regard as an ominous element functioning within the Air Force. During the summer of 1956, Saucer News editor James Moseley postulated an addition to this enigmatic company in the June 1956 issue of his magazine, theorizing that flying saucers were originally being researched by the United States in 1946, were capable of speeds exceeding 4,000 miles an hour, and were operating from a super-secret subterranean base below a southwestern state. He continued, the whole project is so highly classified that ordinary military pilots and even the Air Force's saucer investigators on Project Blue Book could not possibly know about it. In fact, this type of saucer is not built by the American government as we ordinarily understand the word government. As fantastic as this might sound, these saucers are actually built, operated, and maintained by an organization which is entirely separate from the military and political branches of the government that we know about. Although a handful of people at the very top of the government know about the existence of this project, they have no direct contact with it. I shall call this secret project the organization. Moseley, according to Flamand, considerably elaborated on the activities of this shadowy cabal with some very extravagant revelations. This secret society, secret government base in the Southwest, is no doubt the very same Dulce facility which we have been exposing throughout this work. Secret societies, if not secret agencies, have their own symbols or emblems. The symbol for the Dulce base that is worn by many of the workers there consists of an upside-down or inverted triangle or pyramid with an upside-down T superimposed over it, as shown in the Delphic graphic file at the beginning of this series of files. William Hamilton reveals the following in regards to the Dulce base. Schoenfeld Clinical Laboratories in Albuquerque analyzed the samples of the affected hides of mutilated cattle studied by Gomez and Burgess that were discovered near Dulce and found significant deposits of potassium and magnesium. The potassium content was 70 times above normal. Level 1 of the Dulce base contains the garage for street maintenance. Level 2 contains the garage for trains, shuttles, tunnel boring machines, and disc maintenance. The Greys and reptoid species have had ancient conflicts with the Nordic humans from outer space societies, and may be staging here for a future conflict. The late Thomas Edwin Costello, who worked within the underground Dulce facility, suggested that the early experiments by Rand and Los Alamos labs in nuclear-powered earth-boring technology has been taken to the extreme. In a letter dated September 1990, he made mention of the nuclear boring mechanisms which can allegedly bore a tunnel through the earth at a rate of 5-10 miles per hour by cracking the surrounding rock and heating the rock and earth into a state of liquid incandescence using super-hot cones, pulsed lasers and other methods. See the United States patent numbers 3,881,777, 3,885,832, and 3,693,731 for instance, via their patent search engine, which can be easily accessed by doing a web search of the United States Patent Office and pressing the liquid or molten rock into the peripheral cracks, where the cold earth cools and solidifies it in a matter of minutes, leaving no leftover materials that would otherwise have to be removed from the tunnel, as in more traditional and expensive tunneling or mining operations. On level 1 is the garage for the street maintenance. Level 2 is the garage for trains, shuttles and Terran drive, bore machine and disc maintenance. Requires Ultra 4 to even see the disc garage. The chief of the genetic experiments is Larry Devon, Los Alamos and Dulce. Another confirmation that the Dulce base is a major terminal, not only for other planetary craft but also a nexus connecting several other underground systems, was sent to us by a woman who knew Thomas Costello on a personal basis, and whose father had worked with Costello in what was referred to as the organization, her exact words, which operated in the upper levels of the Joint Interaction Facilities near Dulce. The following description of one of the more ancient tunnels was given by Thomas Costello himself. The halls around the Dulce base are slightly curved, and in most locations you can see what looks like an endless corridor. It is only when you glance up and see the high ceiling of the natural rock covering do you remember you are inside an immense cavern. The place has the feeling of infinity, or a sense of seeing something immemorial. I realize this place has been expanded repeatedly over many years. But somehow, a person tends to forget the written history the manual describes. The place feels ancient. The native races of this planet have used the tunnels and caverns for centuries. Human hands too, added their personal touch in a way that makes you feel the passing of age. Here and there the architectural designs resemble the fantasy of Art Deco. Doors display the designs and angles that recall the playful grace of that era. From tunnel entrances stare down carved gargoyles and winged beings that cling to your memory much longer than they should. Those grotesque gargoyles are dark and look like a preview of the Nightmare Hall. Some of the faces of the frightful creatures depicted have lost details in a way that softens the ugliness. History is a way of erasing details in the memory of the original form. Just as well, perhaps the gargoyles were carved from live mortals. Maybe from something seen on the 6th level. One specific tunnel, Tau's, is completely different. The symbol that marks the portal is the symbol for marsh, or wetlands. The shape resembles the letter Z with 2 cross lines. It was not until I had to make a goodwill run to Tau's to escort a foreign dignitary on a tour of the base, did I realize why the tunnel was so named. After a few miles the rock tunnel walls became mostly white in color and were decorated with carved plant life of all kinds. Here, I saw ancient fern trees with huge rose-like flowers depicted in beautiful relief. These beautiful walls portray a dense archaic tropical thicket. Beyond the trees, in the background, some unknown ancient mountains are depicted in the same clear style. I slowed the car, searched the scene, hoping to see animal or humanoid creatures, but there was none. No signs or signatures in sight, unless they were written in a long-lost unrecognized hand. Note, was this one of the more ancient tunnels that was left by a prehistoric race, a tunnel which was already ancient at the time that the United States government and the reptiloids/greys discovered or took control of the original underground systems? Perhaps a tunnel in an underground system that was excavated in prehistoric times by the ancestors of the Pueblo Indians of the Four Corners area, whose legends claim that they were chased out of the cavern world by invading reptilian forces, that is, according to Hopi Apache descendant Robert Morningsky. Brenton, it looked like every plant on Earth, ancient and modern, were faithfully displayed. Mile after miles of trees, wheat, corn, flowers and grasses graced the gleaming walls. It must be the most beautiful place on Earth. Maybe it was created as a museum. Or perhaps a shrine to plant life. Regardless of the reason, there is no way that place could have been made by the hands of modern man. These carved plants are in minute detail, and they look brand new. My eyes had quickly scanned the upper sections of the tunnel and hoping to find the source of the soft illumination that now seems to be coming from everywhere. I found no answers. I had stopped the electric car, wanting to touch those walls, in the hope I might guess the age upon closer examination. To my surprise the walls were covered with some transparent covering. Those walls felt like polished glass, and looked about a foot thick. The biggest shock was when I touched the astonishing gleaming wall. The slightest contact created a wave of quivering of the lights. What is even more surprising, was that the lights were inside the glass. Starting as a soft gentle harmonic sound that resonated with the shimmering lights, and grew to a bone-deep vibration that was subtle and surprisingly invasive, like someone speaking to me when I'm meditating. The tunnel echoed with musical tones. I struggled to isolate the difference between what I was hearing and what I was feeling. I could not separate them. I sensed that the tones were designed to provide information in ancient language. The changing tones were at first received at a rapid rate that I couldn't understand. Like learning a foreign language, at first the words are endless sound, but after a while separate words are recognized. I know the musical tones are words, and I recognize it as a lost language. I started the car, almost feeling lightheaded from the ongoing sounds. I wanted to stop the flow of words that were musical and pleasant. After I knew they were words that I couldn't understand, I wanted the dialogue to end. I felt those tones clear to my bones, and the tonal vibrations refused to leave me until I left the tunnel. It was one of the most profound experiences of my life, but I'm sure I wouldn't want to do it again. At the Dulce base, the road was exit on the first 3 levels. From all other levels the roads will climb in a steep spiral to join the upper levels. After a few miles more those 3 levels too, join in a huge intersection that rivals any cloverleaf exchange anywhere. The 5 main exit roads that leave the base have no markings anywhere, but after the exchanges, there are mileage markers in English posted in the walls of the tunnels. The underground highways occasionally follow the same direction as the Terra Drive shuttle. That shuttle is also known as the subglobal system. Note, different sources claim that one must be a very high-ranking Mason, corporate intelligence agent, or a native subterran to gain access to the subglobal system. There are several access terminals in North America and elsewhere where identification must be provided. However, according to Al Billick and others, when one has passed the security checks they are free to go wherever they please in the subglobal network, and the inner dwellers just generally assume that if one has made it that far, then they more or less have authorization to be there. Many of the residents of the underground, whether exterrans, subterrans or visitors from the surface, are tied into a collective mind or group intelligence matrix called the Ashtar or Astarte network, which has its roots in the underground systems below ancient Egypt. This has been the main framework for collaboration between humanoids and reptiloids and other alien life forms. Although there have always been independent humanoid and reptiloid factions that have been at war with each other for centuries, in more recent decades following the Dulce Wars, et al., these conflicts have been increasing within the inner Earth between the collectivists and the individualists. Because of this we might reason that the inner world highways may not always be safe places to travel alone, even if one has the clearances to do so. Although there is a collaboration of convenience between certain human and reptilian groups, this mainly grows out of the aliens' need for human cooperation in implementing total global electronic control, and vice versa, not necessarily out of any major level of friendship or tolerance between the two races. For instance, in order to implement the New World Order, the human elite must absolutely depend on the alien mind control technology, and the aliens in turn must depend on the human social structure connections. They must have each other's assistance and cooperation in order to implement a world government. Apparently they will worry about fighting over which side comes out with absolute control when and if the global dictatorship is implemented. We must realize that the underground world is just as alien to dwellers on the surface as are the worlds from which many of the interstellar starships that have been seen in our atmosphere hail. It is a very ancient world whose inhabitants have interacted with other worlds, or have even colonized other worlds, over a period of thousands of years. Branton, Chapter 16. Dulce, New Mexico and the Ashtar Connection. The following is an edited version of a very extensive file downloaded from the internet. Some of the highlights/emphasis are mine. Branton. From Michael.Corbin at P0.F428.N104.C1.Fidonet.org. Michael Corbin. Newsgroups. Alt.Alien.Visitors. Subject, Dulce Report. Message ID, 138,993.2A566EB0 at paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 5th of July 92 3:20 and 6 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Sender, Huffgate@paranet.fidonet.org. Newsout 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 127. Asterisk forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. Asterisk originally from Michael Corbin. Asterisk originally dated 07-04-92-2017. The following was uploaded by a user on Paranet. It is being provided in its entirety for information purposes only. Paranet or its affiliates makes no claims to its truthfulness or validity and does not endorse its contents in any way. As a further note, under paragraph 3e, it mentions that there are buildings 5-sided with a dome. Paranet has seen photographic evidence of such buildings. These buildings are not buildings as one would think of them, but what appear to be wilderness observation platforms. The Dulce report denies any of these buildings appeared in their investigation. The Dulce report. Number 920527. May 27, 1992. A field investigation and evaluation. A Phoenix Project report. The Phoenix Project reports are published by Advent Publishing Company. P.O. Box 3748. Carson City, Nevada 89702. Opening note, Paranet has done an investigation into the Phoenix organization which put out this report. Contrary to the claims of the authors of this document, Paranet has found obvious links between the Phoenix Project and the Phoenix Report, an outlet for the Ashtar Collective. One of the leaders and spokesman for this collective is a being that goes by the name of Hatan. Hatan, according to some sources, is a 9-feet Pleiadian with severe fascist leanings who claims to be a reptilian defector from the unholy Six Orion Draconian Empire. Other sources claim that the Ashtar Collective, or at least a large segment of the collective which was infiltrated and assimilated by Draco-Orion agents posing as Ascended Masters, is now in direct collaboration with the Reptilian Greys and the Unholy Six. In such an event, it would not be surprising for the Draco-Orion-controlled segment of the Ashtar network to seek to discredit a base under Dulce, New Mexico if in fact the base is being controlled and operated jointly by Draconian and Ashtarian forces. For instance, the joint Draconian-Ashtarian forces which, some believe, are operating in conjunction with the anomalous Hale-Bopp comet. Since the original document chain in which the Dulce report appears contains over 140 kilobits and is an obvious smear effort, for instance throughout the document you will read passage after passage containing phrases like, "There is no evidence for phenomena which have been confirmed by several other researchers. I have decided not to waste valuable space, and have eliminated the rambling and innocuous sweeping opinionated attempts on the part of the authors to wipe the entire Dulce issue under the carpet. I have instead gleaned the information which may be useful to those who accept the obvious fact that something is actually going on near Dulce, New Mexico. Whether it involves top-secret government activity or alien activity or both is debatable. The fact is, something strange is happening in and around Dulce, New Mexico." Branton. The document begins as follows. The town of Dulce is located in northern New Mexico near the southern border of Colorado. Dulce is located 83 miles northeast of Farmington, New Mexico on the United States Route 64. See Map Exhibit 1. It has a population of 1,648 and is nestled in a valley. Just to the north and overlooking the town is the larger Coletta Mesa. The town is at an altitude of 6,825 feet above sea level. The main income-producing activity in the area is cattle ranching. The business and service activities are typical of those needed in a community of this size. There are no military or industrial activities, large or small, in the area. See Photo Exhibits 4 and 5. In order to present the results of our investigation, it is necessary to refer to items of information, widely available to UFO researchers, concerning the Dulce, U.S./alien base. In the following, we will quote from those items of information. We will attempt to identify the source whenever possible. This will be followed by our findings. The investigation. 1. Source information excerpts, Dulce papers. Text author unknown. A joint U.S./AB facility exists beneath the Arcoleta Mesa near the town of Dulce, New Mexico. 1a. This facility has been in existence in one form or another since 1948. 1b. The facility proper is located 1 kilometer underground. 1c. The base is approximately 2.5 miles northwest of Dulce, and almost overlooks the town. 1d. There is a paved government road 36 feet wide going into the area. Findings of Phoenix Project Investigation (PHX) regarding the foregoing. PHX 1a. No substantiating county records confirm this. Local residents have no memory of any government installation, civilian or military, ever having existed in this area. PHX 1b. Same as 1a. There is no record or memory of any underground heavy construction, excavation, or mining activity in the area. ******2 Source information excerpts, 1988 Grill 2. Text. During the occupation of the Greys, they have established quite a number of underground bases all over the world, especially in the United States. 2A. One such base, among others in the same state, is under Archuleta Mesa, which is about 2.5 miles northwest of Dulce, New Mexico. The foregoing extract is from a transcript of a conversation between Jim McCampbell and Dr. Paul Bennewitz on July 13, 1984. ****3 Source information excerpts, 1988 Grill 2. Text. 3A. Bennewitz reports he was able to determine the location of the underground facility, a kilometer underground beneath Archuleta Mesa on the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation near Dulce, New Mexico. Since 1976, one of the areas of the United States hardest hit by mutilations. 3B. Bennewitz's information is that this installation is operated jointly as part of an ongoing program of cooperation between the United States government and the EBS. Back to the base under discussion. After Bennewitz briefed Air Force officials on what he had found, a trip to the area revealed the following data. 3C. The base is 2.5 miles northwest of Dulce, and almost overlooks the town. 3D. There is a level highway 36 feet wide going into the area. It is a government road. 3E. One can see telemetry trailers and buildings that are five-sided with a dome. Next to the domes, a black limousine was noted, a CIA vehicle. 3F. These limos will run you off the road if you try to get into the area. 3G. To the north there is a launch site. 3H. There are two wrecked ships there. They are 36 feet long with wings, and one can see oxygen and hydrogen tanks. The ships that we got out of the trade are atomic-powered with plutonium pellets. Refueling of the plutonium is accomplished at Los Alamos. 3I. The base has been there since 1948. Some of the discs are piloted by the NSA. 3J. The base is 4,000 feet long. 3K. And helicopters are going in and out of there all the time. When it became known that Bennewitz was familiar with this, the mutilations in the area stopped. 3L. In 1979, something happened and the base was temporarily closed. There was an argument over weapons and our people were chased out. The aliens killed 66 of our people, and 44 got away. Side note, Krista Tilton claims that the government activity at Dulce may no longer be present, as there are signs that the upper levels have been deactivated, at least in regards to human government activity. Sightings of Greys atop the Archuleta Mesa have been reported by Jicarilla Apache Indians as of the early 1990s. Such reports have made their way to Krista Tilton, suggesting that even if the government activity at Dulce has ceased, the Greys/reptiloids are apparently still operating there en masse and very active within the base, and are continuing on with their former agendas. Branton, one of the people who in fact got away, was a CIA agent who, before leaving, made some notes, photos, and videotapes, and went into hiding. He has been in hiding ever since, and every 6 months he contacts each of 5 people he left copies of the material with. His instructions were that if he missed 4 successive contacts, the people could do whatever they want with the material. The material was received in December 1987 by many researchers. The Dulce papers were composed of 25 black and white photos, a videotape with no dialogue, and a set of papers that included technical information regarding the jointly occupied CIA alien facility 1 kilometer beneath the Archuleta Mesa near Dulce, New Mexico. 3M. The facility still exists and is currently operational. Findings. I've deleted several paragraphs which basically state, in the most technical sounding terminology the authors could conjure, that all of the above doesn't exist. Branton. ****4 Source information excerpts, Project Beta by Dr. Paul Bennewitz. 4A. Numerous roadblocks extend northward. 4B. Maintained roads some 30 feet wide and servicing facilities, tanks, etc. There is also an apparent foundation for another helipad group of underscores. 4C. Human housing, and another black limousine with tracks leading to it west of the road. The total alien basing area apparently contains several cultures, all under the designation Unity 4D, and is approx 3 kilometers wide by 8 kilometers long, and is located in the middle of nowhere on the Jicarilla Indian Reservation west of Dulce, New Mexico. Based on the number of ships presently in this area, the total alien population is estimated to be at least 2,000 and most likely more. The former self-professed Dulce-based security officer Thomas C. Costello stated that there were over 18,000 Greys based under Dulce while he was there. Branton, group of dashes. Logistical plans, group of dashes. Initial logistics would indicate a plan sequentially implemented as follows. This plan does not include all requirements and preparatory safety measures to be employed by the ground force. However, if Air Force intelligence desires to pursue the approaches suggested in this report, each significant requirement will be discussed in depth. 4E. The attack must be directed almost entirely on the ground since vehicle ignition problems will be encountered. All electrical and electronic equipment must be hardened using specific techniques perfected prior to implementation. This information has been checked by interaction and eavesdropping on their communication channels. Group of underscores. As far as weaknesses are concerned, the program would be instigated in phases. 4F. 1. The first procedure would be to close the gates of the dam above the Navajo River. This dam could be held closed for the duration. Internal to the one cave, there is a small dam for water storage. Its capacity is small. 4G. There is also a discharge outlet downstream that could be closed, causing wastewater to back up into the caves. The water is vacuum pumped apparently by some electrostatic means from the river. 4H. There is a water intake and dam upstream that can be totally cut off and the water rerouted to Cama, New Mexico. ***** Findings. Refer to last note. Much more of the same innocuous and rambling evasiveness. However, if you really are determined to see the entire file, I suppose you could log on to Paranet via the internet and access it. Branton. ***5 Source information excerpt. The size it. Text. William C. Cooper. The alien underground base is located beneath an Indian reservation near the small town of Dulce, New Mexico. Findings. All of the previous findings apply to this source information. Signed, The Phoenix Project. End of file. Paranet file name, dulcedoc.txt. Paranet SM Information Service, via Paranet Node 1, 104 420 seconds. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User _name. Internet, Paranet SM. Information.service@p0.f428.n104.z1. FIDANet.org. From, rodbatslugo.corporation.sgi.com. Rod Beckwith. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Dulce Report. Conclusion. Message ID, 1992 JUL7.0000018.24512 odin.corporation.sgi.com. Date, the 7th of July 92 0 and 18 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. References, 138,997.2A566 EBC at paranet.fidanet.org. Center, news@odin.corporation.sgi.com. Net News. Organization, Silicon Graphics, Incorporated. Lines, 21. NNTP Posting Host, slugo.corporation.sgi.com. Michael, didn't Bill Moore get tangled up in this situation? Didn't this whole episode cause Paul Bennewitz to have a nervous breakdown? Do you have any further documentation on this aspect of the investigation? I for one would like to find out where some, if not all, of the disinformation came from. Are there any other investigations the Phoenix Project is working on? Thanks, Rod Beckwith Pipe. Group of $signs. Datacom/S Pipe. The great obstacle of progress is pipe, not ignorance. rodbatcorporation.sgi.com. Pipe, but the illusion of knowledge. From, michael.corbin@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidanet.org. Michael Corbin. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Dulce Report. Conclusion. Message ID, 139,085.2A5B8080 at paranet.fidanet.org. Date, the 8th of July 92 23:19 and 2 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate at paranet.fidanet.org. News out 1.26. Organization, Fidanet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 22. Dear Michael, I read all of the information that you posted and appreciated your work and the work of the Phoenix reports, but I don't believe it. It doesn't add up to me and I won't explain why. You may be right and I'm wrong. I hope I am wrong in this case. That's all folks. John Winston. First, That was not my work, nor did I have anything to do with it. Someone uploaded that material to Paranet and I simply reposted it with permission. I have found numerous problems with it myself, and, although I do not necessarily believe that something is happening at Dulce, I think that the Phoenix material is just more disinformation. Mike. From paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org sm. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Rating on Dulce Report and K2 Report. Message ID, 139,161.2A610FC9@paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 13th of July 92.502 and 2 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate@paranet.fidonet.org. News out 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 49. Asterisk forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. Asterisk originally from Paranet SM Information Service. Asterisk originally dated 07-12-922201. Recently we published 2 reports generated by the Phoenix Project, a group in Carson City, Nevada. These 2 documents allege that members of this group investigated reports of underground alien bases in Dulce, New Mexico, and an underground alien base located in the Pluma National Forest in Northern California. Note, basically their investigation proved that the Dulce base did not exist, but that the K2 UFO base in California did. Why do I get the feeling that if the K2 base does in fact exist, then we should not be too concerned about it? Could it be that there is an actual alien force based in the Plumas National Forest that is contesting the activities at Dulce? Just remember that for every visible conflict, there's often an invisible conflict taking place behind the scenes. Often the pawns cannot see who the real chess players are. Branton, because of the following findings/reasons, Paranet has assigned a high level of probability that the material contained in the documents is disinformation and is inaccurate. The reasons are as follows. 1. The Phoenix Project is unknown to the general UFO research community. Nowhere in any of the materials are the principles of the organization identified. As is the case with any materials where substantive findings are reported, it demonstrates a strong lack of credibility when the names and addresses of the investigators are not provided. 2. Due to an investigation that has been ongoing, we have found that the material on Dulce is inaccurate. It is interesting that the Dulce report denies that anything exists at Dulce. Although we have found no information to the contrary, we feel that the report from the Phoenix Project is inaccurate as to location of buildings and other factors. There are things down there which are unusual. 3. The K2 material is too ambiguous and does not provide enough reliable data bits to launch an investigation into the claims. It appears that although the report is written with some literary license, the findings are presented in a very unscientific fashion. Paranet will provide a complete report of its investigation into the various other claims contained in the reports as soon as the information is available. We have written to the Phoenix Project requesting further information. In the meantime, we urge caution in the use of this material. Michael Corbin, Director, Paranet Information Services. Paranet SM Information Service, via Paranet Node 1, 104/420 seconds. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User_name. Internet, Paranet SM. Information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. From paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. sm. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, strong word of caution. Message ID, 139,389.2A739F99@paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 27th of July 92.656 and 3 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate@paranet.fidonet.org. News out 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 25 * forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. * originally from Paranet SM Information Service. * originally dated 07-26-92-2356. Over the last few days we have been posting information supplied by the Phoenix Project of Carson City, Nevada. This information has been strongly disclaimed by Paranet pending the results of our investigation to determine the validity of the Phoenix Project and its officers. While the investigation is still ongoing, we have found some highly disturbing things relating to credibility of the group. This information will be reported as soon as the investigation is completed. This should be in the next few days. Until this investigation is complete and the findings published, Paranet wishes to urge everyone not to send any money to the group. Michael Corbin, Director, Paranet SM Information Service, via Paranet Node 1, 104 420 seconds. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User_name. Internet, Paranet SM. Information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. From paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. SM. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Report on Phoenix Project. Message ID, 139,577.2A8171224 Date, the 6th of August 92 1816 and 1 second Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate@paranet.fidonet.org. Newsout 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 177. A few weeks ago, Paranet received online copies of several documents which purported to come from a previously unknown organization called the Phoenix Project. The project is described in the documents as a private, civilian, research organization which was formed in 1952 to investigate and correlate information concerning UFOs and ETs. According to the information contained in the documents, for a small price one can receive printed copies of the project's reports, complete with maps, magnetometer readings, and a host of other supporting charts and diagrams which serve to make the whole endeavor look scientific and legitimate. The documents we received were formulated as investigative reports on two of the hottest and most controversial issues within the UFO research community, the underground alien bases which are said to exist at numerous locations around the United States, and the cluster of alleged UFO-related projects sometimes referred to collectively as Operation Majestic 12. Specifically, the material consisted of three separate documents. 1. The Ultimate Secret, originally dated the 4th of August 1989 and revised most recently the 5th of May 1992, purporting to lay bare the inner workings of the government's secret UFO projects, including the recovery of alien technology and bodies from crashed UFOs, the exploitation of this technology by a number of code-named government projects, and the involvement of NASA and the SDI program in preparing for conflict with alien invaders. 2. The Dulce Report, dated the 27th of May 1992, describing an on-site investigation of the Dulce and Arcoleta Mesa area in New Mexico, which purportedly proved beyond any doubt that there is nothing there of any interest to UFO researchers despite persistent reports to the contrary. And 3. The K2 Report, originally dated the 28th of July 1989 and revised the 27th of June 1992, which purports to document the discovery of a genuine secret alien base in the Pilot Peak area of Plumas County, California. Paranet quickly reviewed this material and posted it in its entirety for our subscribers, pursuant to the permissions attached to the material by the publisher. We also posted a preliminary evaluation which warned that the material might contain inaccuracies or deliberate disinformation. This evaluation was based on a number of factors. 1. Much of the information in The Ultimate Secret about Operation Majestic 12 and associated projects is clearly related to, and probably derived from, earlier material which has been dismissed as worthless by almost all reputable UFO researchers. 2. Much of the information in The Dulce Report about Dulce and the Arcoleta Mesa contradicts information already provided to Paranet by other capable investigators. 3. Some of the information in The K2 Report is intrinsically implausible, although, admittedly, not impossible, such as the claim that a seasoned military intelligence operative forgot his camera when rushing to document a UFO landing site, or that by the next day that same landing site had been resighted by the aliens. To obliterate all the evidence, Paranet received the three documents as uploads from a Mr. Jack L. Mathias of Carson City, Nevada, who represented himself as the sole public spokesman for the project. But the reports themselves name neither the authors of the documents nor the principals of the Phoenix Project. Instead, They cryptically state that they are the work of former military personnel who have all been associated with intelligence activities, and have knowledge of covert government operations concerning UFOs, and also disinformation projects. Branton. Given the sorry history of anonymous documents and former government agents in the UFO community, Paranet felt it necessary to start its own investigation in an effort to determine just who was behind the Phoenix Project and what their motives might be. First, we sent a letter to the post office box listed in the documents, asking for further information about the group, but the letter was not answered. We corresponded by electronic mail with Mr. Matthias, who represents himself as an agent for the group, but he refused to provide any of the information we requested. So much for the direct approach. Each document formally states that the Phoenix Project logo is a registered trademark, presumably in the state of Nevada, since that is where their mailing address is located. So we tried to query to the Nevada Trademark Office in Carson City. That office informed us that the state of Nevada has no record of any current trademarks under the Phoenix Project name. They did say that articles of incorporation were filed under the name of the Phoenix Project on the 25th of August 1988 by a Mr. Thomas Naylor of Las Vegas, Nevada. However, the corporation failed to file the names and addresses of its officers by the 1st of July 1989 as required by Nevada law, as a result of which the incorporation was revoked by the Nevada Secretary of State. And so we reached another apparent dead end, except for one bit of trivia uncovered by a Paranet investigator in Las Vegas. An attorney named Thomas C. Naylor had recently moved into an office building at 2810 West Charleston in Las Vegas. Next we contacted the United States Postal Service in Carson City, Nevada to determine the box holder for the Phoenix Project's publisher, Advent Publishing Company. We were told that the box was registered to a Richard T. Miller, whose address was given as a mobile home park in Carson City. Following this, we contacted the clerk and recorder's office in Carson City, and determined that a Richard Miller is listed with them as the legal owner of Advent Publishing. However, the telephone number they gave us for Mr. Miller has been disconnected, and directory assistance was unable to provide a new one. Another brick wall. To this point, all attempts to verify the Phoenix Project's legitimacy using conventional methods had proved futile, so we decided to try a different approach. The Phoenix Project explicitly and emphatically disclaims affiliation with any other groups using the name Phoenix. And just to make sure everyone gets the message, each document states at the beginning that, in particular, there is no affiliation with a publisher known as America West, any of its publications, or the individuals known as George and Desiree Green. Note, one source has informed us that George Green has ties to the CIA. However, this source was not able to confirm this claim, and so it should be taken only as a possibility. Branton. Unfortunately, Paranet has uncovered evidence that these disclaimers may be intended to conceal rather than to illuminate. America West, it turns out, is the publisher of a magazine called The Phoenix Liberator, which carries large quantities of channeled material alleged to originate with an entity from the Pleiades known as Hatan. The Phoenix Liberator has come under fire recently from some in the UFO community as anti-Semitic and neo-fascist. See, for example, Hatan's World, a neo-Nazi ET? By Don Ecker in the July/August 1992 issue of UFO magazine. Note, according to the Video Secrets of the Third Reich, available via Vladimir Terziski, President, American Academy of Dissident Sciences, 10970 Ashton Avenue No. 310, Los Angeles, California, 90024, phone and fax, USA, 310-473-9717, the Nazi Thal Society not only channeled the Ashtar forces, but had developed several aerial disc designs, photographs of which are depicted in the film. One disc type was the Adamski model. Whether Adamski's contacts were actually Nazis masquerading as Venusians, or whether the Nazis had somehow gained access to a Venusian Pleiadian scout ship is not clear at this time. However, John Lear has stated that a small renegade Pleiadian faction in Aldebaran, which had sold itself over to the Ashtarian Draconian agenda, had intentionally crashed one of their ships, loaded to the hilt with high-tech equipment, so that they could get the technology to their Germanic/Bavarian allies while at the same time making an effort to seemingly bypass the established non-intervention laws of the Saturnian Lyran Pleiadian Andromedan Federation. Lear also claims that this Pleiadian Ashtarian faction also wanted Germany to initiate a war which hopefully would reduce the population of the planet to a point where the Ashtar/Gaza Alliance or collective could establish more influence with less resistance in the international affairs of planet Earth. This collaboration with the Bavarians also being motivated by certain extremist interventionist and racist factions from Lyra and Aldebaran who were intent on making their Aryan brothers on Earth the dominant race. Branton. But Hutton and his defenders vehemently deny the charge of being Nazis, and the whole affair has been widely and rather nastily trumpeted both on the net and in print. It seems that until recently America West Publishers and the Phoenix Liberator were operated out of Tallahassee, California, which, according to many investigative sources, is a major center for collaborative alien and military-industrial activity. Branton. But a few days ago one of Paranet's subscribers uploaded a response from Hutton to Don Ecker, which he said he had pulled down from the Phoenix Liberator BBS. And with it he posted a new address for the Liberator. That address was all too familiar, 2810 West Charleston Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada, the same building, it seems, where an attorney named Thomas Naylor also has his new office. And then another strange coincidence. A posting coming across the internet stated that before Hutton channeled through his current host, he used to convey his messages through a Mr. Richard Miller, who started an organization which was known as the Solar Cross and which was apparently a forerunner of the Phoenix Liberator. Note, these channeled messages are apparently received through sonic beams from hovering craft which interact with microelectronic implants that have been placed in various individuals who have been connected to the Ashtar Collective in this manner. Branton. Is this the same Richard Miller who owns the Phoenix Project's publisher, Advent Publishing Company? We do not yet know if the Thomas Naylor who tried to incorporate the Phoenix Project is the same Thomas Naylor who apparently shares 2810 West Charleston with the new offices of the Phoenix Liberator. We do not yet know if the Richard Miller who owns Advent Publishing is the same Richard Miller who reportedly once channeled Hutton. In short, we do not yet know if the Phoenix Project is truly an independent organization, or merely another incarnation of America West Publishers and the Phoenix Liberator. But the coincidences are certainly striking and suggestive. And in light of this we again urge extreme caution in dealing with the Phoenix Project material, until such time as a definitive assessment of the project's motives and reliability can be made. Paranet will keep you advised of our findings as they become available. If you have any information about the Phoenix Project, especially regarding its possible relationship with the Phoenix Liberator or America West Publishers, please send it to Michael Corbin by internet mail to mcorbin@paranet.org. By FidoNet to 1-104-422, by the United States Mail to P.O. Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado 80034-0172, or by phone at 303-431-8796. Paranet SM Information Service, via Paranet Node 1-104-422. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User_name. Internet, Paranet SM. Information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. From paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. Paranet Information Service. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, our response to Phoenix Project. Message ID, 139,863.2A94058D@paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 20th of August 92 2025 and 7 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate@paranet.fidonet.org. Newsout 1.26. Organization, FidoNet Node 1-104/428.0, lines, 159. Asterisk forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. Asterisk originally from Paranet Information Service. Asterisk originally dated 08-20-92-1323. On the 6th of August 1992, Paranet Information Service posted a preliminary statement on our investigation into an organization known as the Phoenix Project, which had recently released investigative reports entitled The Dulce Report, The K2 Report, and The Ultimate Secret. In our statement we pointed out some apparent problems with all three Phoenix Project reports, as well as some suspicious aspects of the project's organization itself. In our conclusion, we issued a warning not to take the Phoenix Project reports at face value, pending further investigation. On the 10th of August 1992, Jack Mathias of the Phoenix Project responded in a long, rambling message posted to a number of bulletin boards and newsgroups. Unfortunately, Rather than dealing with the substantive issues raised in our previous postings regarding the project and its publications, Mr. Matthias's statement consisted mostly of ad hominem attacks impugning the motives, integrity, and competence of Paranet's officers and investigators. Here is some typical language excerpted from the Phoenix Project statement. You blew it. A snap judgment without examining the evidence. Your spontaneous and instant negative reaction. Your attitude problem. You abused your position of trust and responsibility. Inexcusable. A new record for prejudice. You've just won the Golden Fleece Award. Outstanding ineptness. Amateur sleuthing. Self-centered. Lacking any real expertise. Seated upon your star throne. Elected yourself to be the final arbiter of the truth. Judge, jury, and executioner. Kangaroo court proceeding of your own fashioning. Armchair expertise. Laughable. Following paragraph after paragraph of this kind of personal invective, Mr. Matthias then suggests that, in our opinion, the public deserves the truth regarding the real story of UFOs, government involvement, and the alien threat that should be our objective. Perhaps you'll agree that that objective is more productive than entertaining the public via the BBS links with a sideshow of petty squabbles and bickering between individuals and organizations. This is a noble sentiment, and one which we at Paranet wholeheartedly agree with. Hopefully in the future the Phoenix Project's representatives will take some of their own advice and try to keep the rhetoric down to a more civilized level. Having said that, let's look at the actual issues raised by this latest salvo from the Phoenix Project, and see how they stack up. Let us review the facts. You reacted by issuing a public warning to the members of Paranet, which was also widely distributed via other BBSs nationwide. That warning contained language which implied the information, and the source, were highly suspect. Thus, single-handedly, you created a strong impression throughout the UFO community, that our information was false. Many sincere people, trusting your qualifications, accepted your warning. True. You took it upon yourself to make a snap judgment without examining the evidence. False. We did not arrive at our conclusion single-handedly or instantaneously. Our analysis and the resulting warning were the products of considerable discussion among Paranet's researchers and subscribers. They were also labeled as tentative, pending further investigation. In your message, you mentioned that you wrote to the Phoenix Project, after the fact in your preliminary judgment, requesting further information. You made the same comment and other BBS messages. You state that we did not respond to your request. You also imply, by insinuation, that this is a mark against us and a further indication that we are suspect. To date we have not received your letter of inquiry. Apparently, of all the mail we receive, your letter is the only one that has gone astray. We can only conclude that it was either lost in the mail or you didn't mail it. Did it ever occur to you to mail us a second request, when you did not receive a response to your first inquiry? The letter was followed up with electronic mail to the project spokesman, Jack Matthias. The request for information was repeated through that channel. The request was refused. But, this was not the end of your attitude problem regarding the Phoenix Project. You did the same thing, again, issuing warnings, etc., with our release of the K2 and the Ultimate Secret reports. And, again, you had not seen or examined the supporting documents at the time you issued those warnings to Paranet and the public. We have already stated our reasons for suspecting the K2 and Ultimate Secret reports. As, with the Dulce report, our suspicions went to the core of the entire concept and execution of both reports. Consequently, it seemed unlikely that the supporting documents would make much difference. Our judgment in this matter was borne out when we received the supporting documents from another source. We were not impressed. Would we be out of line in concluding that your mind was already made up? Yes, that would be out of line, since our minds were not and in fact are not yet entirely made up. Our warnings were tentative, and in our view totally justified. So far we have not been provided with any evidence to the contrary. If such evidence is provided, we will not only change our minds but say so publicly. Fortunately, for the UFO movement, other investigators and researchers don't share your opinion. That's not the feedback we've been getting. You state in your initial message that much of the information in the Dulce report about Dulce and the Arco Mesa contradicts information already provided to Paranet by other capable investigators. What information? Who provided it? How did you determine its validity? Our information consists of the testimony of Paranet investigators and others who have been in Dulce and on the Mesa. Their experiences were very different from what you describe, and it is difficult to reconcile your claims with the findings of our own people. We formally request access to that information. We'd like to examine it ourselves. Can we obtain copies of that information? Our investigation continues, and the information will be made public when it is complete. At that time we will be glad to provide you with a complimentary copy of our report. Now, let us get to the main thrust of your message, your investigation to reveal the personnel of the Phoenix Project. Several paragraphs of meaningless abuse deleted. What, if anything, is the Phoenix Project guilty of? Is it the fact that we dared to question and investigate two of the sacred cows of UFO, namely the ones you mentioned, that is, underground alien bases, and the cluster of government projects referred to collectively as Operation Majestic 12? Paranet Information Service, via Paranet Node 1, 104 420 seconds. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User_name. Internet, paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. From, paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. Paranet Information Service. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Phoenix Responds, Part 2. Message ID 139,864.2A94005B0 at paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 20th of August 92 2025 and 9 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Offgate at paranet.fidonet.org. Newsout 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 168. Asterisk forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. Asterisk originally from Paranet Information Service. Asterisk originally dated 08-20-92-1323. Continued from previous message. No. Paranet has long questioned both of those sacred cows. To this point we have seen no acceptable proof for the existence of any underground alien base near Dulce, nor have we seen adequate proof for the existence of Operation Majestic 12. We have publicly stated as much on many occasions. Note, I personally believe that there is much evidence for underground activity near Dulce. As for proof, along the line of a network video crew broadcasting a live special report from inside the Dulce underground labs or something of the sort, admittedly that kind of proof is yet to be forthcoming. Branton, according to our sources within the intelligence community, the Dulce scam, perpetrated by the disinformation specialists of MAGI, better known to you as Majestic 12 with help from the CIA and NSA, is considered one of their most brilliant success stories. But, of course, these sources cannot be named, and all we have to go on is your word that they even exist. And, unfortunately, you are making a concerted effort to keep anyone from knowing who you are, either. Anonymous stories relayed by anonymous storytellers. Sorry, but that's not evidence. We sent in experienced investigators, not amateurs, to check out the alleged Dulce base. Those people knew what to look for, how to look for it, how to get answers, and are not easily misled. We have no evidence for this except your say-so. If you do not agree with our findings, get off your posterior, go to Dulce, and check it out for yourself. We have. In fact, we invite anybody to do the same thing. We're sure you'll find exactly what we did. We didn't. You imply that you're good at asking questions. How are you at answering them? We have a few questions. Would you mind sharing with all of us, everyone on the BBSs and the public, what hard evidence you have that, without question, supports the presence and validity of the Dulce base? Would you mind sharing what hard evidence you have that we ever said anything of the kind? We have never said anything in support of the presence of a secret alien base at Dulce. In point of fact, we consider it extremely unlikely that any such base exists, at Dulce or anywhere else. That's one of the reasons we have so much trouble with your K2 report, which purports to document the existence of just such a base in California. Unless you have irrefutable evidence to present, made available for public scrutiny and evaluation, which invalidates the findings of the Phoenix Project regarding Dulce, K2, or the ultimate secret, or future reports, back off. Either put up or shut up. In other words, get off our back. Alright, challenge accepted. Let's start with this statement from your ultimate secret report. According to eyewitness testimony, the CIA agent in charge of this covert operation, wearing the uniform of an AF colonel, was William C. Cooper. This witness testifies that this is the same William C. Cooper, who has been prominent since 1988 in the civilian UFO movement. Is this William C. Cooper supposed to be the famous Bill Cooper we have all come to know so well? Apparently so. Unfortunately, in his own published documents Bill Cooper gives his full name as Milton William Cooper, not William C. Cooper. Either Cooper doesn't know his own name, or the Phoenix Project's eyewitness doesn't know what he's talking about. And while we're on the subject of Bill Cooper, it is instructive to compare some of the text of the Phoenix Project's ultimate secret document with some of Bill Cooper's material on the same subject. Cooper writes in his Operation Majority, final release, Project Grudge was financed by CIA confidential funds, non-appropriated, and money from the illicit drug trade. The purpose of Project Grudge was to collect all scientific, technological, medical and intelligence information from UFO/EX sightings and contacts with alien life forms. This orderly file of collected information has been used to advance the United States space program. Now look at the corresponding paragraph of the Phoenix Project's ultimate secret report. Project Aquarius was funded by CIA confidential funds, non-appropriated. The purpose of Project Aquarius was to collect all scientific, technological, medical and intelligence information from UFO/EX sightings and contacts with alien life forms. This orderly file of collected information has been used to advance the United States space program and provided the data needed to develop present stealth technology. You don't have to be an intelligence agent to see that these two passages are virtually identical in both content and phrasing. Since Cooper's statement is dated the 10th of January 1989, more than half a year before the ultimate secret report's origination date of the 4th of August 1989, we seem to be left with three possibilities. 1. Cooper was somehow privy to the Phoenix Project's investigative results even before they were first put to paper. Or, 2. The Phoenix Project plagiarized Cooper's writings. Or, 3. The Phoenix Project's own investigations drew on the same original sources as Cooper apparently did in compiling his own materials. Whichever one you pick, it's not a pretty picture. But it gets worse. The basic information revealing the existence of Operation Majestic 12, the crashed UFOs, alien beings, and their secret bases within the United States, was obtained through the Freedom of Information Act from the files of the CIA, NSA, FBI, State Department, the United States Air Force. This is utter nonsense, as any perusal of published FOIA documents on UFOs would quickly reveal. FOIA requests have forced the government to disgorge many hundreds of pages of UFO documents over the years, but they provide little, if any, support for the existence of Operation Majestic 12, crashed saucers, alien beings, or secret bases. If the Phoenix Project is relying on already published documents as their source for this claim, for example, the UFO cover-up by Lawrence Fawcett and Barry Greenwood, or Above Top Secret by Timothy Good, then clearly they have not examined them very carefully. On the other hand, if the project really does have such explosive FOIA documents in its possession, let's see them. Their publication would do more to establish the project's credibility than anything else it could possibly do short of producing a live alien. Project Grudge. This project was originally established in 1953, by order of President Eisenhower, and is under the control of the CIA, NSA, and MAGI. Project Grudge went underground, and another project, Project Sign, was established as a cover operation. In 1960, the project's name was changed from Project Sign to Project Blue Book. This is demonstrably and totally wrong. Project Sign was established first, in 1937, and it was under the control of the Air Force, not the CIA. The name was changed to Project Grudge in 1949, and to Blue Book in 1952, not 1960. For details, see the report on Unidentified Flying Objects by Edward J. Ruppelt, who headed the project from 1951 to 1953. The exact dates slide around a little bit depending on whether you are talking about when the decision was made, when the order was signed, or when the order became effective. But the differences are on the order of months, not decades. How could the Phoenix Project's experienced intelligence agents make so many ludicrous errors in a single paragraph? Paranet Information Service, via Paranet Node 1, 104 420 seconds. UCF. SECOM. Paranet. User _name. Internet, Paranet. Information. Service at p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. From paranet.information.service@p0.f428.n104.c1.fidonet.org. Paranet Information Service. Newsgroups, alt.alien.visitors. Subject, Phoenix responds, conclusion. Message ID, 139,865.2A94005B4 at paranet.fidonet.org. Date, the 20th of August 92 2025 and 11 seconds Greenwich Mean Time. Center, Huffgate at paranet.fidonet.org. Newsout 1.26. Organization, Fidonet Node 1, 104/428.0, lines, 222. Asterisk forwarded from Paranet UFO Echo. Asterisk originally from Paranet Information Service. Asterisk originally dated 08-20-92-13-24. Continued from previous message. In fact, this whole business was such an embarrassing mess that the Phoenix Project issued a correction document to try to straighten it out. But, ironically, the correction is also wrong, just less obviously so. We could go on, but I think you get the point. The ultimate secret report is, at best, a rehash of other people's garbage. At worst, it is a deliberate effort to confuse and disinform. We actively encourage other serious investigators to use the information we have provided as a basis for conducting their own inquiry and to carry on our effort. Can you, Mr. Corbin, or Paranet, or Muffin, make the same claim? Or, is it true that the results of critical investigations are held sacred by the elite leadership of these organizations, and are not shared with the members of their organizations or the public? We can't speak for other organizations, but in the case of Paranet we have always made our results public as soon as our investigations are complete. In your message, you insinuate that because of our past military and intelligence backgrounds, our area of expertise so to speak, that the motives of the Phoenix Project are suspect. You further insinuate that we are possibly government operatives attempting to send serious researchers off on a variety of wild goose chases. Given the prior history of government disinformation and ufology, most of it purveyed by active or former intelligence agents and their victims, anyone who, 1. purports to have a military intelligence background, 2. refuses to divulge their identity, and 3. propagates known disinformation as reliable intelligence, whether deliberately or not, should expect his motives to be considered suspect until proven otherwise. It is extremely naive of you to think it would happen any other way. If anyone needed assurance that the truth regarding UFOs will remain a deep, dark secret, they can rest secure in the knowledge that you are on the job. There are any number of government agencies who would welcome you with open arms. Expect some offers. Sorry, none so far. We'll let you know if we get any. We are sure that the honest and sincere members of Paranet and other UFO investigative organizations, and there are many, must be seriously considering whether your qualifications, fitness and investigative ability warrant your continuance in a position of leadership within what used to be a respected research organization. Note, in my own experience with misinformation, disinformation and debunker agents, very little effort is made to address the information at hand or rationally explain away information, claims or data that is being released by an individual. Most of the efforts on the part of such agents are directed against the individuals themselves, as in character assassinations and attacks. In many cases they know that they cannot refute the information, so they attempt to discredit the information through character assassination. Do police officers immediately discredit what a drug dealer tells them when he is exposing his superiors so that he himself can acquire a lesser sentence, or what a convicted child molester might tell them about a ritual child abuse ring that he has been involved with? No, especially if there is sufficient evidence to back up their claims. Someone who has been involved personally with some illicit activity can be more of a reliable source than someone who just hears about it secondhand. So the character assassination strategy by certain agents does not hold water, especially in a case such as this, wherein Paranet officials have had their character and integrity unjustly attacked in order to divert attention from the subject at hand, or to divert attention from the lack of integrity or outright deceitfulness of these agents themselves. I personally do not claim to be the infallible specimen of a perfect human being. I have a jail record, and suffer from emotional and psychological disabilities resulting from years of suppressed interactions with what I believe to be malevolent alien agendas and certain human agencies which are or were involved with them. Although the psychological emotional turmoil or instability may not be entirely my fault, the jail term was a result of my own irresponsibility. What I am trying to say is that I do not claim to have it all together any more than the average human being does, so why engage in character assassination against someone who lives in a world whose overall inhabitants are generally lacking in perfect character? Show me someone with full awareness of good and evil who has never broken a law or one of the 10 Commandments. Aside from the Messiah himself, there is no human being on earth that can make such a claim. And most often than not, when someone targets an individual for character assassination, as they say, it takes one to know one. So in the search for the truth about what is really happening in this world, I would suggest that you do not get caught up in emotional exchanges and character attacks which only serve to cloud the real issue, which is whether the information itself is or is not correct. This is not to say that character has no bearing whatsoever on information. For instance, someone who has been known in the past to be a con artist might not be taken as seriously as an original source of information as, you might say, someone who has won a Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. However, we do need to keep a balance. Brenton, exactly the opposite, actually. Most of our people are grateful for the warning, and are coming to the same conclusions as we did. Instead of making an honest attempt to validate or disprove our findings regarding the subjects mentioned, missing the point completely, you chose to become obsessed with determining the identity of Phoenix Project personnel. For what reason? Do you intend to judge the validity of the information based on the credentials of those providing it? Some people would interpret that as putting the cart before the horse. And some people would interpret it as a determination not to fall prey to the same fate as far too many others in this field, who trusted strangers too easily and ended up wasting years chasing wild geese, or worse. You suggest a possible link between our organization and America West. Sorry about that, but you're dead wrong. It has come to us from several sources that we're not on our list of favorite people. We will take this opportunity to categorically deny that we have any affiliation with America West, their publication The Phoenix Liberator, or any other publication they provide. Do not expect us to respond to the other coincidences, suppositions, insinuations or innuendos contained in your message. Why? Perhaps because there are other insinuations that cannot be truthfully denied? As a matter of fact, we now have solid confirmation of another one of our insinuations. That is, the fact that the Richard Miller who owns Advent Publishing is indeed the same Richard Miller who used to channel Hutton. That confirmation came from none other than Mr. Miller himself. So I guess we're not doing too badly. In consideration of your explicit denials of any ties to America West, and in view of the additional information provided privately by Mr. Miller, we withdraw our previous suggestion of possible connections between the Phoenix Project and the America West/Phoenix Liberator operation. As we stated before, those suggestions were tentative pending further investigation, and further investigation has not uncovered any additional evidence to support them. Unfortunately, this is the kind of burden that the Phoenix Project inevitably took on when it chose to publicly portray itself as a clandestine organization. Since you brought up America West and the Phoenix Liberator, why not turn your investigative abilities loose on their organization? Just suppose that Milton Cooper is, quietly, linked to their organization. That should intrigue you. Equally intriguing is where their funding comes from, not the obvious subscription income, the covert funding. Or, how about the busy and numerous, off-premise, writers that prepare the volumes of Hutton material, and their use of high-speed modems to provide the copy for each weekly issue of the Phoenix Liberator and the dozens of books they produce. In our supposition, we were talking about a big-time operation. You might also check out their printing facilities, distribution centers, and worldwide circulation. Equally fascinating is their sudden rise, in a few short years, to the top of the New Age movement. You might even think to ask yourself, why the New Age movement? What possible connection is there with covert government UFO activities, or a New World Order, with the New Age movement? The answer to that might be revealed, if you dig deep enough, and discover high-speed modem links between their headquarters and certain organizations located at Langley and Fort Meade. Yes, if you really dig, you might uncover all kinds of interesting things about America West. Thanks for the tip. Note, I may be wrong, But this sounds very similar to the ramblings of cultists who have broken off from the mother sect to establish their own branch cults. Essentially agreeing with the basic belief system, which in this case might be the channeling of Ashtar intelligences, while at the same time claiming that they and not their former apostate leaders are the sole spokesmen for the higher powers on earth. As for the religious denomination in which I was raised, one which dominates a major Western state and stretches the constitutional restrictions on separation of church and state to their uttermost limits, I have come to find out that over 500 branch religions ranging from a few followers to tens of thousands of followers have separated from the main denomination. This is one of the main reasons why I became a non-denominationalist Judeo-Christian. One of these 500 or so branches incidentally was the Freeman Order, which was involved in a drawn-out FBI standoff in 1996. Though the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights allows for the right to worship as one wishes so long as one does not infringe on the constitutional rights of others and the laws of the land. Of course, inquisitional or terrorist religious practices, or the religious practice of ritual child abuse, or religious institutions that attempt to force their will upon an elected government, or one whose members in government use taxpayer funds or personal influence to show political favoritism towards their churches, have no place in a constitutional democratic republic. Nor does our constitutional system have to put up with cults like the Freemen who have blatantly resisted the publicly instituted legal restrictions against money fraud or child sexual abuse, even if the Freemen or similar cults hypocritically use Ruby Ridge, Waco or other legitimate yet incendiary catchphrases to justify their own illegal activities. Branton, as to your effort in trying to identify staff personnel of the Phoenix Project, good luck. However, we do have to admit that you may get lucky and hit on a couple of them. However, since there are many, it is doubtful you will ever get beyond that point. Our only interest in the personnel of the Phoenix Project is to determine whether the project has a hidden agenda, and whether it is covertly linked to other organizations whose agendas are known. That interest was made necessary by the project's clandestine nature and consequent lack of public accountability. You brought it on yourselves, and your continuing hostility and evasiveness suggest that we were not entirely mistaken in our suspicions. Our investigation continues. We'll let you know what we find out. Michael Corbin, Director, Paranet Information Service. End. Chapter 17. The Black Budget and the Underground Empire. On October 20, 1991, California researcher Michael Lindemann, founder of the 2020 Group, gave a lecture before a large crowd of interested investigators. During the course of his lecture, wherein he discussed the military-industrial complex's underground bases outside of Lancaster, California, he made the following statements. How many of you have seen the book Blank Check? It is not a UFO book. I strongly recommend that you read the book Blank Check so that you can understand something about how these projects are funded without your say-so, indeed without the say-so of Congress. Most citizens don't know, for example, that the National Security Act of 1947 made it illegal to ever say how much money is spent on the CIA. Indeed, all of our tremendous alphabet soup collection of intelligence agencies, whether you're talking about the CIA, or the NRO, or the NSA or the DIA, etc., all of them are in the same category. You cannot say how much these things cost. All you can do if you want to find out is add up the numbers on the budget that aren't assigned to anything that actually means anything. There are these huge categories that have tens of billions of dollars in them that say nothing but special projects. And every year the Congress dutifully passes this bloated budget that has some $300 billion or more with huge chunks of cash labeled like that, special projects, unusual stuff. $10 billion. Okay, well, where does the unusual stuff money go? Well, it does go to unusual stuff, that's for sure, and one of the places it goes is that it goes into the underground bases. Indeed, Tim said recently, since the publication of his book, Blank Check, more black budget money goes into underground bases than any other kind of work. Now, I don't believe the $35 billion, which is the approximate size of the black budget money that you can find by analyzing the budget, I don't think that comes close to the real figure, because there is absolutely unequivocal evidence that a great deal of additional money was generated in other ways, such as the surreptitious running of guns and drugs. And one wonderful example of that is coming to light with the BCCI scandal, which I hope you've heard of. A number of very high-ranking American officials are caught in the undertow of the Chi tidal wave. Even though these guys are trying to pull fast ones on an immense scale, they are getting caught. These things don't always work. Indeed, they are very, very vulnerable. Indeed, this whole endgame is very vulnerable, and that's why they feel it requires such secrecy. The American people wouldn't stand for this stuff if they had the information, and that's the reason why we have to get the information out and take it seriously, because it really is a matter of our money and our future that's being mortgaged here. But my friend who worked in the underground bases, who was doing sheetrock, was down on, he thinks, approximately the 30th level underground. These bases are perhaps 30-35 stories deep ground scrapers. As I say, they are not just mine shafts, these are huge, giant facilities. Many city blocks in circumference, able to house tens of thousands of people. One of them, the Yano facility, we were told by the county fire department director, the county fire department chief, who had to go in there to look at a minor fire infraction. There's a 400-car parking lot on the first level of the Yano facility, but cars never come in and out. Those are the cars that they use inside. Okay, so a very interesting situation down there. Our guy was doing sheetrock on the 30th floor, maybe the 30th floor, underground. He and his crew are working on a wall, and right over here is an elevator door. The elevator door opens and, a kind of reflex action, you look, and he saw 3 guys. 2 of them, human engineers that he's seen before. And between them a guy that stood about 8 to 8.5 feet tall. Green skin, reptilian features, extra long arms, wearing a lab coat, holding a clipboard. I tend to believe that story because, first of all, because we have other stories like it, but more importantly because he walked off the job that very day. And he was getting paid a great deal of money. If you're basically a sheetrock kind of guy, if you can do sheetrock in a place like that, then you get paid way more than standard sheetrock wages. You can count on it. So, he walked off that job. His buddy on that same crew turned into an alcoholic shortly after. This is an extremely upsetting thing. You know, it wasn't like this alien jumped out and bit his head off or anything. It was just standing there for a few minutes. The doors closed. He has a feeling that that elevator was malfunctioning, otherwise he never would have seen that except by accident. According to former Walken Hut employee Michael Reconociuto, there is a direct underground connection between the Nevada military complex and the underground facilities near Lancaster, California, such as the Tehachapi Mountain Base. Several people have referred to the subsurface as well as the operational connections between the Dulce base in New Mexico and the Dreamland or Area 51 base in Nevada, connections that exist via Dugway, Utah and Page, Arizona. If alien forces are intent on taking control of this planet, then it would be logical for them to target our major military weapons research and development centers. This might involve actual infiltration of our military-industrial complexes and control of the line of command through mind control of specific and strategic personnel. The deeper one descends into the underground alien empire, the greater the security, and therefore the greater the control will be in regards to this. From the bottom up. Takeover attempt. In many cases, patriotic Americans have become caught in the middle of this underground war between loyal American military personnel and alien or alien-controlled personnel, as was the case in the Dulce and the Groom Wars themselves. Some have managed to escape from their terrifying encounters and, whether intentionally or unintentionally, as in the following incident, have voiced their fears, concerns or even rage to those on the outside who will listen. The following conversation, in relation to the Nevada military complex and the underground facilities, took place on the Billy Goodman Happening, Veg Radio 840 AM, Las Vegas, Nevada, on November 19, 1989. It was transcribed by a Las Vegas resident. Billy Goodman, incidentally, has personally planned visits, in collaboration with KNBC Radio in Los Angeles, to observe the discs which are being tested at Groom Lake, Nevada. Goodman and others claim to have seen these discs in operation, and back up these claims with video documentation. One such video shows a hovering object making a vertical ascent, stopping in midair, followed by a horizontal traverse, followed by another vertical ascent. Something like this would be impossible for any conventionally known aircraft at the time to duplicate. Billy Goodman, who has since moved to another radio station in Los Angeles, has been very instrumental in getting the information out about the underground base at Site 51 or Area 51. One contact of ours has informed us that a good friend of hers in Las Vegas, Nevada, had uncovered some very disturbing facts and testimonies concerning construction workers and others who had been involved in the installation of certain equipment within the tunnels beneath the Nevada military complex, and particularly under the Mercury, Nevada area. Many of these later died under bizarre circumstances, and there were rumors that others were being held captive underground because they saw too much. This informant, Stacy Borland, was later found dead, along with a brother of hers, in Las Vegas, as the result of a gangland-type execution. Someone had apparently entered her place and murdered them in cold blood. In the following annotated transcript, the caller, who claims to be a worker in the underground facilities below Mercury, Nevada, will be identified as C, and Billy Goodman as G. Hi. You're on the Billy Goodman Happening Wonk Veg. Sir, what can I do for you tonight? C. Okay, are you ready? Hang on to your seats. Here goes. We are going 3,000 feet underground. Okay, we get to that point, 3,000 feet. We come out into a stainless steel atmosphere. And we come upon people that are construction people, working people, and so forth that are supposed to be in that area. Then we come upon another people who push us into another little room. They tell us, do not come out of that area until you are told to. These guys are 6 minute Marines, alright? They tell us, if you do, you are going to get hurt. Okay? So we are construction workers. Gee, where are you working? Where is what you are describing to us? C, on a certain test site. G, a certain test site. Which one? You can't reveal which one? C, we were kinda mixed up. We don't know what the hell is going on. We were making a good bucks. And everything has come down on us. And they're hurting us. Okay? So we are contractors. We are workers. Okay? So there's a person that I called and explained what is happening to me, and they told me to call you and tell you. So, that is what I am doing right now. Calling you. Gee, you presented it in a very odd way. First of all, I didn't know if you were going to be serious or what. Are you saying to me that you are a construction worker and you had to go 3,000 feet underground? First of all, what would you be doing underground? Let me ask you that. C, we are running lights and power. G, and who assigned you this job? C, it's through Reynolds Electronics. I have to say that because I get my paycheck from someone else. Note, Reynolds Electronics is a branch of, for example, and G Corporation, which does in fact work within contract through the Nevada and Utah test sites. Branton, G, they tell you to put these lights underground. C, yeah, but there's more to it than that. I'm sort of afraid of expressing. Am I talking to you or what? G, yes, you are talking directly to me. C, okay, you know some of the things that are happening, shouldn't be. It should be made public. The public should know what the hell is going on. And it scares the hell out of me. What is not being brought out, you know? For example, can I give you an example? Here's an example. A few weeks back we were inside a certain cavern going through stainless steel halls, going north, and as we move along we are hanging lights. And the rooms are. They're like operating rooms. All of a sudden, off the elevator, our United States Marines come out, crash us down off our scaffold, pushing us down, and then into a room. This is taking a hell of a lot out of me to tell you this right now. The bosses come into the room and we were getting debriefed and all this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden they are carrying fixed bayonets. Now I fought in Vietnam and I thought these guys were my buddies. Oh, no way. Forget it. These guys are from outer space. These people brought these little characters on gurneys, okay? They had big heads and little bodies and they went into this little room. Then, behind them, these doctors in white coats and stuff. And we was really we didn't know what the hell was going on. We were shocked to hell. I was scared, man. Gee, well, sure you didn't know what was going on and didn't expect it. I guess them handling you upset you first of all. Being man to man, you thought, why should you treat me this way? And that's to be expected. As far as knowing where you are, I have no idea. See, I know where I was. I work there every day. I keep a log, and if someone asks me, I know what's going on. I'm telling you, man, they were not telling us the truth. There is something damn wrong within our government. I only got a glimpse of this scientist on television that is most likely referring to Robert Lazar, Branton, but I know he's not telling much of what he knows. I'm just a worker. A hammer and nail man. This guy's got more brains than I do, and will know more about it than I do. There's something inside they aren't telling us. Gee, okay, I understand that. Now what do you want us to do about it? C, expose it. Gee, I think you've done that yourself, just now. Now you haven't told us your location, and I think that's important so we have some idea where this is. I hope you understand at this moment. See, I work at Mercury, Nevada, and I'm the best electrician there. This is between you and me now. I don't want anybody else to know about this. Gee, but you're on the air, sir? See, you mean somebody knows about this besides you and me? Gee, but you were talking over the radio, sir? Everybody, all over the West Coast that is listening has just heard you. So you've gotten your word out. Now let's see if anybody else knows about it. Maybe, just maybe, we'll get some calls from some of the people that work with you. See, wait a minute. You mean somebody else knows about this besides you and me? Gee, now, this is a talk show. You called a talk show. I'm over the radio, that's where you called. See, oh, my God. Gee, why, what's wrong with that? You called a talk show. See, I thought I was just talking to you. Gee, now you said someone told you to call me. Was it someone you work with? See, yes. Gee, nobody knows who you are. You haven't said your name or anything. Now, let's see if anyone will back up your story. See, but I didn't know other people would hear this. Now I'm scared for my life. There's tremendous stuff out there that's being hidden. It's being corrupted inside. It's being stashed away. Gee, well, that's what we do here. We are trying to bring the information out, and it's people like yourself who are making that happen. They bring us information all the time. Are you trying to bring the information out yourself because you don't like what's going on? See, I fear for my life because I've seen what happened. I fear for my life because the government is lying to me. Gee, okay, why do you fear for your life? Have you been threatened? See, before you even go down in the pit they threaten you. That is, you tell anything of what you saw, you are dead. Gee, but you're not saying more than what you saw. Is there anything else you want to say before we say thank you for calling? See, yes, one other thing. Whenever it gets down to the nitty-gritty, it will be clear to the people that what they are seeing on the news is true. We've got 6 little bodies underground, man. Gee, please keep in touch, okay? End of transcript. Chapter 18. Dulce and the Military-Industrial Establishment. Researcher William F. Hamilton was one of the first to write about the Mount Shasta subterranean colony of Telos, an underground city which is said to be the western branch of a subterranean kingdom that certain Asian fraternities refer to as the Agharti Network. Mr. Hamilton had personally met with the reputed Crown Princess of Telos, Sharula, as well as with some of her immediate relatives in the mid-1982s, during his investigations into underground base activity in North America. Based on what Bill has learned, Telos might not be as safe a place to live as one might at first believe. Just like anywhere else on Earth, Telos itself suffers from its own conflicts between factions with different agendas, ranging from those who aligned themselves with the Andro-Pleiadian Federation and their non-interventionist, individualist beliefs, and those who have taken sides with the Draco-Orion Empire and their interventionist, collectivist philosophies. One might say that the scenarios taking place within Telos are somewhat of a counterpart of similar power struggles taking place within Sirius and within the United States government. The same could hold true within the entire Agharti network, which has its center of activity under the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, and which allegedly contained 2 opposing factions during the Second World War period, the technologists who secretly sided with the Allied forces, and the occultists who sided with the Axis forces. Since the Telos-Agharti alliance is tied in with the Ashtar Collective, there are bound to be some internal conflicts within those cultures, just as there have been reported conflicts between the Orionite interventionists and Pleiadian non-interventionists within the Ashtarian Collective itself. All this is based on reports from contactee Israel Norkin and others that the Ashtar Collective has been infiltrated by Draconian Orionite agents posing as Ascended Masters, and that a large segment of the Ashtar Command has been commandeered by these interventionist collectivist forces and has split off from another large segment of the Alliance, which has apparently sided with the Andro-Pleiadian Federation. What distinguishes the two is that the Andro-Pleiadian Federation believes in truth individualism non-interventionism, whereas the Draco-Orion Empire adheres to a philosophy of deception collectivism interventionism. According to contactee Alex Collier, these two factions are now or have been at war within the Sirius B system, and this conflict has entered the Sol system with the Draconian Orion reptilians and their paraphysical overlords operating from Hale-Bopp Comet in collaboration with their rebel Sirian cultists who are operating from within the infiltrated segment of the Ashtar Collective, occupying Hale-Bopp's so-called companion battleship, reputedly a former Sirian Alliance battleship, which some have dubbed Hail Mary. This Saturn-shaped object was seen and photographed by both Chuck Schrammick and is also seen in a leaked Hubble Space Telescope image, along with other objects that apparently jumped ship as the comet circled around the Sun. This scenario seems to be reminiscent of the movie Life Force, which depicted a race of Draconian-like alien vampires that entered the system undetected in the tail of a comet. Alex Collier claims that the non-interventionist from the Pleiades constellations, from Tau Ceti, Procyon and other systems, have blockaded the Sol system near the orbital sphere of Neptune in order to keep the Draconian Orionite forces out and to keep them from interfering with our planet at this critical and vulnerable point in planet Earth's history. According to Collier's otherworldly friends, there have been devastating battles with casualties on both sides that have been waged between the Federation and the Empire in this current war in heaven, current as this is being written, involving our Sol system, and also in one that was waged shortly before this in the Sirius system. A war that has gravitated from Sirius to our own Sol system. So, pray for our friends out there who are risking their lives for our sakes. It is the very least that we can do. William Hamilton incidentally has voiced his concern that Sharula, being a member of the ruling class of Telos, seems to be involved in this current conflict taking place between the two Asterian factions, the Draco-Orion faction and the Andropleiadine faction, although just how this has affected her on a personal basis is unclear. This may also hold true with the entire Melchizedek order, which has a major presence in Telos, in the Saturnian moon-based cities, in Sirius, in Arcturus and elsewhere. Most of the misled Sirian cultists are being led to believe that the New World Order is being orchestrated for the purpose of establishing world peace and laying the groundwork to usher in a planetary ascension into higher dimensions in a harmonious and orderly fashion. They forget, however, the history of atrocities that have followed the ancient Bavarian Roman cults who are promoting the New World Order and of their reptilian hosts in Draconis and Orion. The massacres in Lyra, Rigel and Procyon being a few examples. If you don't know what I'm talking about at this point, you will by the time you finish this volume. Branton. In short, the Draconians and Orions are psychologically and emotionally manipulating their cultic human followers in Sirius B, the Gazette Empire and Bavaria who are tied in with the dark side of the Ashtar Collective, to establish a global government which they intend to annex to their Luciferian Interstellar Empire Collective. William Hamilton himself has gained a great deal of intelligence on the secret government's underground bases, many of which are as of this writing under the control of the collaboration, or those military industrialists who have sold out to the humanoid reptiloid collaborators from Draconis, Orion and Sirius B, who are more or less given free rein within the secret government's underground network. In an article which appeared in Patrick O'Connell's Trends and Predictions Analyst newsletter. Volume 6, No. 2, July, 1990 issue, William Hamilton stated, "The cover-up was initiated soon after the Roswell, New Mexico crash. We wanted to know, 1. Who they were, 2. Why they were here, 3. How their technology worked. The cover-up became a matter of national security, a blanket word covering secrecy and deception. The cover-up involves secret organizations within our government such as MJ-12, Pi-40, MAGI, Delta, the Jason Scholars, ampersand known intelligence organizations such as Naval Intelligence, Air Force Office of Special Investigation, OFOSI, the Defense Investigative Service, DIS, the CIA, NSA, and more. It involves think tanks such as RAND, the Ford Foundation, the Aspen Institute, ampersand Brookings Institute. It involves corporations such as Bechtel, GE, ITT, Amoco, Northrop, Lockheed, ampersand many others. It involves secret societies who may be the hidden bosses of the orchestrated events, that is economic collapse, wars, assassinations, conspiracies to manipulate and control humans and thereby to exercise enormous power over the destiny of the human race. The Illuminati, Masons, Knights of Malta, etc. The individual players are too numerous to list. The whole of this conspiracy forms an interlocking nexus. The goal is said to be a one-world government dictatorship. The underground nation, The RAND symposium held on deep underground construction indicated that plans were hatched during the 50s to build underground bases, laboratories, and city complexes linked by a stupendous network of tunnels to preserve and protect the ongoing secret interests of the secret societies. These secret societies made a pact with alien entities in order to further motives of domination. Actually, as it turns out, the secret societies, are now being dominated by the aliens. One can only assume that if certain humans would sell out their own kind to an alien race and use such an unholy alliance to gain domination over their fellow men, then they should consider the fact that they, according to universal law, must in the same way open themselves up to manipulation and control by their supposed benefactors. Thus one can see the utter insanity of hoping to establish domination of others by petitioning the assistance of an imperialistic alien force. The human elite may think that their reptilian collectivist hosts will shower their egos with praise and rewards for their cooperation in selling out their own planet, but in reality the Draconians consider the human elite as being useless weeds, as they do all humans in general, but necessary fodder in order to carry out their agenda. Mr. Hamilton continues. The underground complexes are not confined to the United States alone. A large underground complex operated by the U.S. exists at Pine Gap, near Alice Springs, Australia. It appears that the secret societies among us have become aware of the coming planetary eco-catastrophe and the possibility of an Earth polar shift in the near future. Surveying the Earth from space, satellites and shuttles reveal extensive damage to our ecosphere. Our planet is wobbling on its axis and its magnetic field is decaying. Ozone depletion and the greenhouse effect are rapidly endangering life on our planet. Alternatives, which include 1. Direct handling of the atmospheric problems, 2. Taking shelter in underground domains, 3. Escape to other planetary bodies in the solar system, have been devised in secret. However, there is a possible alternative 4 which mostly depends on a completely different idea on how to save the Earth. Note, this may be, in essence, a project to colonize other dimensional frequencies or densities that exist elsewhere within the superspectrum of the one universal reality. Although others have suggested that alternative 4 may involve a HAARP-type manipulation of the atmosphere in an effort to get control of the situation, Branton. Bill Hamilton then explains some of the mystery surrounding the so-called hybrids who have been encountered by UFO abductees, and why an actual cross between humanoids and reptiloids, thank God, might never succeed. It is unlikely that the reptilian greys are crossbreeding with humans. Reptilians carry their sex organs internally and reproduce by eggs hatched by solar heat. Reptoids have well-developed eyes, no hair follicles, no external ear cartilage is consistent with most reptilian species. Since their means of reproduction is incompatible with our own, it is suggested that humans, women, Branton, may be fertilized by the greys by artificial insemination with human spermatozoa, or perhaps they use the human uterus as an incubation chamber. Note, other indications are that the reptilians inject or encodify the human embryo with reptilian or other DNA during the early stages of development. It is even believed by some abductees that they have the ability to reprogram the genetic information within an egg before it has been fertilized. As for the so-called hybrids, Hamilton's statements seem to be confirmed by others, including abductees, who have hinted that the hybrid fetuses are actually alien-looking or human-appearing hybrids who are conceived through a human seed taken from human male and female abductees. In other words, the fetus would fall to one species line or the other, an alien-appearing being lacking a soul, or a human-like child with a soul. It is said that within the hybrid society, the more human-looking hybrids consider themselves superior to the alien-appearing hybrids. Their more human-like features are a source of pride and status, even though many of the hybrids are nevertheless servants of the greys. Some abductees have reported that they have observed experiments involving the attempted mixtures of human and cattle DNA to create a hybrid being. Many of the so-called hybrids, however, are nevertheless essentially human. For instance, the hybrids or humanoid hybrids would possess crimson blood, 5 fingers, round pupils, ears, and exterior reproductive organs, although the reproductive organs might be minimized and non-operative. If they possess even one of these traits, there is a chance that the hybrid might possess a human soul, although this may not always be the case, as with the chameleons and so on. In such a case, our detectors, which could detect whether or not the being has a multicolored chakra system, would be a possible fail-safe means to determine the imposters from the real thing. The rebrides, or reptiloid hybrids, would generally possess greenish blood similar to that which the greys themselves possess, 4 fingers, opaque black and/or vertical slit pupils, no visible ears, and no exterior reproductive organs. Hamilton continues. Alien vehicles are being tested at the Alien Physical Technology Center at S4 at the Nevada test site. Alien vehicles are being replicated at Kirtland F. Vincentia Laboratories, and these replicas are referred to as ARFs, Alien Reproductive Vehicles. Note, subsequent research by William Hamilton and Norio Hayakawa have confirmed that McDonnell Douglas, Lockheed, and Northrop Corps are now involved with the replication of alien hardware for the military-industrial establishment. If this technology is being used for our own American defenses, then this is all well and fine. However, if the technology is being appropriated by the New World Order interests, under the oversight of the reptiloids/greys, then the sellout of our military-industrial complex to a pro-draconian and/or anti-American superpower would be considered high treason, just as the sellout of our entire stealth fleet to the United Nations/New World Order control structure, which has taken place, should be considered high treason. Branton, at least 3 of these vehicles are stored in hangars at Norton AFB, California. It is alleged that vehicle propulsion units were constructed by General Electric and composite materials were provided by Amoco. Alien vehicles generate an artificial gravity field which can be focused and intensified for high-speed travel. Alien organisms and biological technology are tested in the upper levels, Branton, at the underground biogenetic laboratories at Dulce, New Mexico. Alien genetic engineering, cloning, and cryogenic technology have been studied with a view towards enhancing human genetics, deciphering the human genome, and gaining a biological advantage by artificial biological engineering. Strange life forms have been bred in these laboratories. Chapter 19. Who controls the Draconian Collective? The following chapter is based upon some thoughts and questions that had been forming in my mind for some time, until many of these questions were answered when I discovered an interesting volume titled Cosmic Voyage, by Mr. Courtney A. Brown, Ph.D. This work deals with the author's personal experiments with remote viewing, along with his trainer at Dames, a former remote viewer for the United States military intelligence, who taught Courtney Brown the secret military RV, or astral magnetic body viewing techniques which he himself had learned as a member of the military Sea Corps. From my own perspective, remote viewing operates through the subspace body of a human being who is able to tap into the universal sonic field. Since the sonic field is the very foundation of all space-time material reality, the so-called master program of the universe, which is made up of a field of sonic or thought form energy, it is not necessarily bound by the limits of space, time and matter. The sonic energy field seems to be interwoven into the electromagnetic grid structure of all gravitational bodies, with the electromagnetic fields of those bodies serving as sonic traps for thought forms which are essentially the psychic residue of all thinking beings, and in turn the accumulated memory matrix of those gravitational planetary bodies. These sonic fields contain thought energy. Now thoughts can either be based on truth or on deception, so just because this thought form energy has accumulated within the gravitational grid structure of a planet, from the time that thinking entities begin interacting with a gravitational sphere, this does not mean that the information which has been programmed into these sonic thought emotion energy fields is always true. Reality, imagination, truth, and deception-based thought forms are all recorded regardless of their content within these electromagnetic energy grids, just as one might record information within a multi-layered crystal via laser technology. Supposing one had the appropriate sophisticated technology, they could bleed a wall, a rock, or any other object of its thought forms, sounds, or visual vibrations which have accumulated within that object over the years. They could literally read the past through these objects. Like a biochemical radio transceiver, some individuals, for better or for worse, seem to have the ability to tune into and surf the universal consciousness, the flowline, or the Akasha memory matrix, which links all thinking entities together on the deepest levels of the unconscious, allowing them to travel to specific places in space and time. You could say that conscious awareness is composed of neural short waves which are localized with the individual. However, unconscious awareness is composed of neural long waves that reach beyond the individual, for instance the neural states that are active during dreaming, thus explaining why many have reported experiencing shared dreams with other people. You could liken neurosonic activity to an ocean. On the surface are islands representing individual third-dimensional consciousness. However, the deeper one goes, the more the thought forms merge with each other, just as the sunken earth beneath the islands eventually connects to other islands at the deeper levels, representative of a collective unconscious where the thought forms of thinking creatures merge into one reservoir. One of the targets to which Mr. Brown's military RV trainer sent him was the Grey Alien's collective mind, and more specifically he was instructed to search out the ultimate command or control center of the collective. Shortly after this particular experiment began, one of many, Brown found himself in an area where several Greys were working, although he did not know exactly where this was. He followed the collective mind or thought flow and found it to be absolutely massive, giving him the feeling of something unbounded, and almost universal in nature. However, he did detect a center, a definite heartbeat of this massive collective matrix, into which and out from which a steady stream of information was flowing. He noticed, at one point, an unusual subspace being that seemed to be directing the activities of the Greys he was observing, and discovered that the bodies of the Greys themselves were incarnated by such subspace beings which apparently entered the Greys' embryonic bodies and used them as vessels to manipulate physical reality. Brown was then instructed to locate other of these beings who apparently controlled the Grey collective from a subspace or astral level, and found himself in an area where several of these subspace or paraphysical entities were located. As he continued towards this center, the number of subspace or non-corporeal beings increased until he came to a place of much activity, something like a Grand Central Station type of area, where these beings were very active in various pursuits. He did not know exactly where this was, but noticed that the closer he came to the control center, the more he sensed an increasing rigid atmosphere of absolute military-like control. He came to what he sensed was the central governing center of the subspace being's activity, and in the center of this there was another area where a council of 10 very high-level subspace or paraphysical entities congregated. These were apparently the governing principalities who were engaged in running the whole operation. The security here was absolutely incredible. Then he perceived the supreme leader of this council of 10 paraphysical entities. And at about this point Courtney Brown was jerked back into his body, so to speak. He sensed that this leader had detected the presence of his own subspace, astral or magnetic body which he had projected, and had followed this RV intruder back to his physical source. Brown and his trainer felt an oppressive, dark cloud enter the room and had stayed there for about half a minute scrutinizing the scene. It left, apparently seeing the two RVers as small fries who were not worth wasting its time on. Before Brown's expulsion from the command center, however, he was able to perceive for a brief moment what this being was really like. Here it was an extremely powerful being, but one with a twisted personality that was full of darkness. Apparently this being had come into conflict with another force which it saw as its enemy. Brown sensed within this being a severe self-esteem problem, in spite of its incredible power, and because of this it had a consuming desire to be worshipped by others. Brown was confused when he sensed that these subspace beings, and in turn the reptilian/Greys, were actually commanded by this leader to engage in self-indulgent and destructive activities. This being apparently wanted his servants to use self-indulgent rewards or fear of punishment to maintain the absolute hierarchical command structure within its empire, as well as through the rest of the subspace hierarchy, and in turn throughout the reptilian Greys collective hive society that they completely infested. Brown also got the impression that it was fear and pride, its perceived need to be worshipped, that kept this being from negotiating with its ancient enemy, and that this being was utterly desperate to maintain its very survival or existence. Strange for a seemingly immortal subspace being, and chose to resort to rebellion and terrorism in a desperate attempt to take control of the situation. Brown received a strong impression that this being was the ultimate universal terrorist. Apparently because of its all-consuming ego, this being would never humble itself before its enemy. And the same might be said for most of the upper echelon of the hierarchy who depended on the praise of their fellow collaborators to maintain their illusion of self-importance. These beings, one might say, had long ago and of their own free agency imploded in upon themselves, becoming spiritual black holes with all-consuming appetites, absolute astral vampire-like parasites, having extinguished all light within themselves and therefore being unable to be brought back into the light. Incapable of giving out light, they have become totally reprobate, devouring any inner life and innocence around them that they can possibly consume. The leader of this subspace collective had long ago drawn these other dark beings into itself, like a large black star devouring other smaller ones around it. This irreversible state might not apply entirely to all of these subspace beings, as we will see later on. Now if we go to the book of Revelation, chapter 12, we find that the ultimate leader of the serpent race's collective or hive mind is Lucifer, also known as the Great Red Dragon, the Old Serpent, the Devil or Satan in the same chapter. Lucifer was one of the three original archangels, aside from Michael and Gabriel, who each apparently had charge over 1/3 of the light beings whom the Almighty had created, possibly numbering in the billions or trillions. Now if you're a hardcore evolutionist, you may not want to suffer through the rest of this chapter, as physical evolution cannot account for spirit entities, nor for the human soul for that matter. As for myself, I have a creationist evolutionist concept of reality, or that life in this universe was created by an infinite intelligence and then allowed to evolve from there in various directions guided by the Creator. A better term might be change rather than to evolve, and that the term evolution is equated with Darwinism in many minds. Remember, it has always been the theory of evolution, not the law of evolution. If one is honest with themselves, they must accept the fact that evolution flies in the face of the second law of thermodynamics. Now that is a law, not a theory, so which one are we to believe? In addition to this, a vast number of protein molecules would have had to exist for even the simplest life form to appear. Just how these molecules could have come together by chance and resulted in an organized life form with complex DNA programming and all is beyond me. According to the laws of probability, the lifespan of an entire galaxy would not be enough time for just one protein molecule to come together by chance out of the dark chaos of lifeless matter, if at all. Then again, there is the question of where the original matter came from, which supposedly resulted from the Big Bang theory, if ever there was such an event. Lucifer, as most may know from theological and eschatological traditions, reflected the infinite light of the Creator with great brilliance, and therefore was given the name Lucifer, meaning light bearer. Bearer being the operative word here. Lucifer reflected the light of the Almighty like a diamond reflects the light of the sun. However, Lucifer began taking his attention off of the source of all life and began giving himself credit for the light that he bore. I use the term he for semantic reasons only, although this being, as well as the eternal Godhead, is not necessarily a being of physical gender from my own understanding, and the next step was inevitable. Lucifer became jealous of the position which the Almighty One held. Now I realize that many of you have different concepts of God. However, let us just indulge in a thought experiment for a moment. If one accepts the concept of a Trinity, then one cannot accuse God of vainglory, for the Father is ever seeking to glorify the Son, the Logos or the living Word, and the Spirit, which the Father and the only begotten Son of God share. The same holds true with the Son and the Spirit, both of them selflessly seeking to give glory to their other two counterparts of the Godhead. How can God be three distinct personalities yet one single God? The plural Elohim, God, and the singular Jehovah, God at the same time. One might just as well ask, how can the universe be one universe yet consist of space, time and matter? Three distinct aspects, yet take one of them away and the singular universe ceases to be? We can also use the trinities of small bullet ultraviolet visible infrared light, and imitating the Father, Son and Spirit. Ultraviolet light is invisible, mid-spectrum light is visible, and infrared light felt. Small bullet or length, width, height, space. Small bullet past, present, future, time. Small bullet energy, motional phenomena, matter. Small bullet proton, neutron, electron, atoms. And other triune manifestations in nature, such as in humans themselves, the physical material body, the solar mental body, and the astral spiritual body, and the sublevels of each of these three distinctions. We ourselves being three in one beings. If I'm beginning to sound preachy, then please bear with me. I believe that many of you will agree that the gray phenomena has both a physical and supernatural nature, and that we cannot fully understand one without accepting the other. One could equate this to the division within the UFO research community in the 1950s and 1960s over whether UFOs were nuts and bolts craft or ethereal supernatural manifestations. Well, why not both? So then, Lucifer, in his jealousy, rallies his followers, 1/3 of the angelic beings, together and convinces them that God is being unjust, that he's holding out on them, and that he, Lucifer, has as much a right to be Almighty God as does God Almighty himself. In addition to this, Lucifer tells his followers that they too can be Almighty gods, all they have to do is follow him in the rebellion. Now, Promising them godhood is very strange, since the more gods there are, the more the term God loses its singular distinction. It's like a potential president promising every United States voter that if he is elected, then he will simultaneously make all of those who voted for him presidents of the United States. Do you see the insanity? Perhaps not, but it seems to be obvious to me. You see, from my perspective, if we are all gods, then there is no God. Pantheism must ultimately lead to atheism. If that's the way you wish to believe, then you certainly have the free agency to do so. But I'm only trying to make a point that according to traditional Judeo-Christian eschatological beliefs, this is the deception that Lucifer used to gain his recruits, the promise of godhood or self-deification being the original venom of the serpent, Genesis chapter 3. And this is the deception that the serpent-inspired Bavarian Illuminati cults via the Scottish Rite of used to gain their recruits for a Luciferian world order on Earth. First by infiltrating Masonry, and then in turn by infiltrating the major religious denominations of the world. Now you can accept this or leave it as you will. I'm not trying to force any beliefs upon anyone, just attempting to provoke some thought on the possible nature of the supernatural forces motivating the Greys collective. Since theological manipulation is a major part of the Greys' agenda, the eschatological component is one that must be dealt with in order to understand the rest. So the rebellion began, and the heavens were torn in two as the standing and fallen angelics warred with each other, resulting in the fallen angels being cast from the realm of eternity and into the physical intergalactic universe. Could the subspace beings described by Courtney Brown be fallen light beings or rebel angels? Brown stated that this leader in ancient times had his followers incarnate the reptilian Grey Society, and had ordered them to sabotage their rays. The fourth planet of was the Greys' home world at the time. However, Zeta II Reticuli is a star lacking in sufficient carbon content to allow for the natural development of carbon-based life. This is for those who may still cling to the evolutionist philosophy, so the Greys must have colonized that world sometime in the distant past. The subspace beings, according to Brown, animated themselves through the Greys and turned them toward a mindset of self-indulgence, which in turn led to the drive within the Greys for immediate gratification at the expense of their future and their world's resources. Sound familiar? Once their world had become a polluted, radioactive ruin which was threatening their very genetic survival, the subspace beings under the command of their leader offered a solution. All the Greys had to do to survive was to give up all individual rights and emotions, and submit to a collective mind which would control every aspect of the Greys' culture, for their own good, of course, they were told. Using the excuse that individuality was the root of the problem, the subspace collectivists took things to the opposite extreme and insisted that assimilation into an absolute collective mind was the answer. In other RV experiments, Brown saw humanoids living on Mars in some past era. A large planetoid grazed the atmosphere with such violence, barely missing the surface, that storm of enormous magnitude swept across the planet and much of the atmosphere itself was blown out into space. The Greys, who were observing this event and could have prevented the disaster, arrived as the planet was in the midst of upheaval, and offered to rescue the Martians, but at a price, namely that the Martian humanoids surrender their society to the control of the Greys collective, and that others be cryogenically preserved in order to preserve the humanoid Martian race. Actually, according to Brown, the main purpose of the cryogenic project was to preserve them as sources for genetic materials to upgrade the Greys race from time to time. It was doubtful that they would ever be awakened, at least en masse. This occurred mostly after the Martian humans had escaped underground and were desperate for survival, every day being a struggle for existence. Now, according to Brown, Mars is under the control of the Greys, although some pockets of humans and hybrids may remain in various places underground. Other sources claim that in 1985 the joint operational Alternative 3 facilities on Mars were sabotaged and taken over by the Draconians, or reptiloids and Greys serving the Luciferian collective. This was apparently one of several purges that the aliens have carried out in order to ensure the absolute conformity of the human collaborators to their agenda, that is by purging out those renegades who possess too much, from their perspective, individuality, which is the mortal enemy of their collective. There is reportedly an elite force of 2,000 original Greys based in the Martian moon Phobos. These Greys are reportedly the house for several million clones that have been bred to serve the reptilian elite in this system. As suggested, the Alternative 3, or the so-called pure breed Aryan super race, humans on Mars and Luna may have been purged due to some level of resistance against the Draconian Orion Reticuli collectivist forces with whom they collaborated. Apparently these humans saw that the two-sided collaboration was turning into a one-sided dictatorship controlled by the reptilian elite, and this purge within the Martian and Lunar Alternative 3 facilities eliminated the resistance factions and ensured that only the most die-hard and devoted mind-controlled Aryan slaves remained. In other words, these Aryan elite suffered the very same fate that they had planned for us lower races on planet Earth. One source has stated that these events on Mars and Luna were one of the main themes of discussion at the notorious meeting which took place between George Bush, Mikhail Gorbachev and the Eastern spiritual leader Maitreya, whom the secret government has reportedly been teleporting around the world using Montauk-type technology in an attempt to provoke a worshipful response from those to whom he appears. Maitreya is the New World Order's ace in the hole and may or may not even turn out to be the one mentioned in Revelation chapter 13. This meeting took place on the island of Malta in the late 1980s, and resulted largely out of Bush and Gorbachev's terror over the events on Mars and the Moon, as well as similar threats that were being faced by the Alternative 2 underground colonies maintained by the military-industrial establishment in joint capacity with the Greys. However, let's get back to the subject at hand. What Brown sensed was that the Greys were desperate. They realized that they not only needed to genetically upgrade their race, but also needed to attain emotional individuality in order for their culture to survive, and this may have something to do with the hybrid projects. However, they are trapped by the collective itself. There is presently a great sense of panic within the collective combined with a bizarre sense of protection, which the combined psychic continuity of the collective provides. Although they are desperate to attain emotional individuality, which they are attempting to do by interfacing with humans, assimilating human genetics, and producing quasi-hybrid genetic offspring, they cannot fully make the break from the collective without the help of those who already exist in an individualized state, namely the humans. For those of you who are familiar with the scenario of the Borg Collective in the Star Trek Next Generation series, certain episodes depicted a Borg entity by the name of Hugh who had developed emotional individuality during his captivity aboard the Enterprise that resulted from his association with human individuals. He was later sent back into the collective and introduced the idea of individuality, and in later episodes gathered quite a following of other Borg who had also broken free from the collective and had developed emotional individuality. The reptilians are not alone in this dilemma, since many human cultures are trapped in collectivism as well, such as those who are a part of the Ashtar or Astarte collective. The problem with the collectivist Greys is that, although they need the humans, the self-destructive instructions coming down through the collective itself from the Luciferian hierarchy are sabotaging all attempts to deal with humans on a reasonable basis. Once they establish an agreement with a humanoid culture for whatever motive, the collective commences to use the agreement for its own imperialistic agendas, and the human collaborators are betrayed and sometimes destroyed, as in the case of some of the Alternative 2 and 3 bases, and war and/or conquest inevitably results. The only answer to the problem that I can see would be to concentrate on severing individual reptiloids and Greys from the collective and attacking the control centers of the collective itself. In this case, mere technical and psychological attacks will not be enough. Supernatural warfare will be the only answer since we are dealing with subspace beings. We need the help of the standing angels, yet at the same time we need to be careful since the fallen angels are good at masquerading as standing angels, which they have often done with those humans who have channeled these entities via occult means, the Heaven's Gate cult leaders and others like them, for instance, feeding these mediums with information which has later turned out to be false, manipulative, or even deadly propaganda. We must realize that the only being in the collective which is allowed to exercise individual choice is their dark leader, and to a lesser extent the inner council, and these beings do not want the reptiloids and Greys to attain emotional individualism. But what about other collectives, like the Ashtar or Astarte collective? Just who is this Ashtar? Why is the Ashtar collective so involved with the Dulce base activity and joint capacity with the Greys and reptiloids? Is it, as contactee Israel Norkin claims, because the unholy 6 star systems of Orion have infiltrated the Ashtar collective to a massive extent? What about the bald 9-foot-tall reptilian from the Pleiades who supposedly defected from the Draconian collective, Hutton? Why hasn't Hutton been warning about this infiltration of his own collective? Is it because he is secretly working for the Draconian Orion Empire? Certainly if he was truly converted from the Draconian collective he could be a lot more zealous in exposing it. Especially its infiltration of the Ashtar collective itself. If we are to believe reports of Star Wars taking place within Sirius B, where the Ashtar Collective has one of its major headquarters, then this leaves open the possibility that the Ashtar Collective Alliance is in the process of splitting or has split down the middle between an interventionist Draco-Aryanite faction and a non-interventionist Andro-Pleiadian faction. Now for some further theological speculation. In 2 Peter 2:4 we read that God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment. This verse is apparently speaking of the high-level leaders of the ancient rebellion, who were so malignant and evil that they were bound in dark prisons deep under the earth. However, the Bible gives several accounts of fallen angels or demons that are fully active on the surface of the earth, so we must conclude that these were lower-ranking angels like the elementals, who were merely following the party line, since they are allowed more or less to roam about the earth freely. If such angels were condemned when the first war in heaven ran its course, then why are they still allowed to more or less roam free? Is God possibly giving them time to reconsider their ways? Does the above verse mean that all fallen angels are irreparably doomed? Or, has the Creator in His infinite mercy given some of the fallen angels, those who still maintain a semblance of regret for their part in the rebellion, one last chance by allowing them physical incarnation through the reptiloids and greys? Could this be why the greys are so absolutely desperate to attain emotional individuality in spite of the restraints of an individuality-killing collective? Could their very eternal destinies be at stake? A few years ago I would have totally rejected the possibility that some of the fallen angels could be included in the plan of redemption, yet now I wonder. Now before you begin labeling me a heretic, I would like to quote 3 verses regarding the serpent race, greys, reptiloids, etc. Now the serpent was more subtle, intelligent/cunning than any beast of the field. And the Lord God said unto the serpent, I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Genesis 6:1-14-15. In its full context, these verses imply that the fallen archangel Lucifer was the being that had incarnated this particular reptilian, possibly something akin to a velociraptor or Stenonychosaurus equalis, or a similar type of bipedsaurian hominoid, and in turn the entire serpent race, promising them power over man and nature if they would allow the Luciferians to reincarnate through their race at will. Whether you take this passage literally or symbolically, the message is essentially the same. Lucifer used the serpent race to deceive the humans into sabotaging their own connection with the God source and thereby sabotaging their supernatural dominion over the lower life forms. And from that point onward these lower life forms began turning wild and untamed because the downward flow of life and order had been broken at the human level, as death and chaos began to reign. One of the races, which reverted to their base animal or predatory instincts, was of course the serpent race, which originally held a position somewhere between mankind and the beasts. Due to mankind's fall and the reptilians' alliance with the Luciferians, the serpent races began taking the upper hand over the human race, or rather, the fallen angels began taking the upper hand over the human race through the serpent races. Today one could say that we see basically the same thing happening, however in this case the Luciferians are known as subspace beings, and the serpents through which they have incarnated are known as the gray aliens, who are attempting to enslave humankind by offering them /us Trojan horse gifts or forbidden fruit in the form of occult technology to those intent on using this technology to establish godlike control and domination over their fellow man. As King Solomon once said, there's no new thing under the sun. But the point I want to make is that according to the verse given above, fallen angels have been reincarnating through the gray and reptiloid serpentine races for several thousands of years. And another verse, in that day the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan the piercing serpent, even Leviathan that crooked serpent. And he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Isaiah 27:1. This verse, unless I'm mistaken, is speaking of the reptilian collective itself, which could be considered as a piercing serpent. And then the following verse, which literally threw me for a loop, praise ye him, all his angels, praise ye him, all his hosts. Praise the Lord from the earth, ye dragons, and all deeps. Psalm 148:2-7. Now unless I'm grossly misinterpreting scripture, it would seem that here God is saying that the fallen angel-incarnated serpent races are told to praise the Almighty, who after all was their creator before they allowed their own race to be corrupted. This may apply to both the spiritual angelic and physical bestial natures of the serpent races. Other verses that we might add to the one above include, let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Psalm 150:6. And he said unto them, "Go ye into all the world, and preach the gospel to every creature." Mark 16:15, "And every creature which is in heaven, and on the earth, and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, Blessing, and honor, and glory, and power, be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever and ever." Revelation 5:13. In order to make the choice to appropriate the redemptive work of the Christ, the reptilites and greys would have to develop emotional individuality and somehow become disconnected from the Luciferian collective. They already possess the first requirement, being creatures possessing the breath of life. In order for a created being which has fallen from grace to be redeemed, they must possess both a spiritual and physical nature. Part of their nature has to die in order for the other part to live, just as the outward worm of a caterpillar must die so that the inward butterfly can live. Although in this case the symbolism is spiritual, it is essentially the same. An entirely spiritual being like a fallen angel in this case could not be redeemed unless it possessed a physical body, as they would not possess a physical counterpart of themselves that could die so that the spiritual counterpart could live. This would not necessarily be a physical death of the body, but a death of the corrupted or fallen nature resident therein. This fallen nature must first be acknowledged just as any other disease must be acknowledged in order to be cured. The death of the fallen nature is a death by proxy resulting from a faith connection to the mysterious working at Calvary, wherein the second member of the Godhead became flesh to serve as the final Passover lamb in order to receive the full retribution for all of the imperfect acts that all created beings, with the breath of life, have committed before an absolutely perfect Creator. The key would be, however, to consciously appropriate this work by directly asking the Almighty for the chance to become a part of this mysterious working at Calvary, which in essence serves as the heartbeat from where the universe is to be regenerated from its fallen state. If all physical life in the galaxy or universe originally had its origin on planet Earth, then Earth would have been the appropriate place for the Almighty to manifest himself in physical form, to shed his lifeblood so that the creation might be redeemed by this very divine and absolutely pure/pristine life essence which the Creator had loosed into his creation, as a divine blood transfusion, if you will. This divine flow was loosed into the physical universe through the uncorrupted and incorruptible lifeblood of the last Passover lamb, which was shed and poured out into the cradle of life, planet Earth. More and more cultures out among the stars are beginning to realize, through ancient records that are being uncovered, that planet Earth is indeed the cradle from whence their distant ancestors emerged, the original cosmic gene pool, and that in a sense they are connected by an invisible umbilicus to the mother world. And as they begin arriving here en masse to visit the Genesis world, we Terrans or Earthians must realize that in a sense they are also a part of this world. The challenge would be to learn how to respect each other's individuality, and how to claim the freedom and liberty that is the inherent right of all human beings, so long as it is practiced without violating the personal space and sovereignty of our neighbors, whether they come from realms below, above, upon or even parallel with this world. This emerald world. This garden planet. This divine terror known as planet Earth. So long as an alien force with ancient documented ties to planet Earth claims territory adjacent to this planet which has not yet been claimed, such as undeveloped underground areas, there should be no problem from those living on the surface. In the same way surface dwellers should respect subterranean cultures to the extent that those cultures respect them. Being an individualist, I am a firm believer that every nation on/in Earth deserves to maintain its individuality and cultural distinction so long as they do not violate the sovereignty of their neighbors. Each country should have the right to determine its own economic, political and spiritual destinies so long as they do not violate the same of other countries. It goes without saying that I am totally against a one-world collectivist government which cannot tolerate individuality or independence in any form. However, the loss of national sovereignties are often the result of human greed. For instance, international bankers loaning billions to smaller countries fully knowing that the selfish leaders of those countries will squander the wealth and fail to repay the loans, thus opening the way for the banksters to claim that countries' national reserves, mineral rights, properties, and other national resources along with a loss of sovereignty. I would hope that the respect for sovereignty on a national basis would cascade down to the individual level also. In addition to the above, unless their existence is being threatened by radioactive dangers or some other threat, a subsurface culture should not interfere with the activities of surface cultures. They should not steal resources, release radioactive poisons into surface environments, or biological diseases, or mutilate animals, or abduct people against their will, or use focused electronic beams to invade the privacy of those on the surface, or interfere with the minds of surface dwellers in any way, or engage in any form of invasion of our sovereignty or the sovereignty of any other non-surface community. Many alien forces, especially the draconian interventionist collectivists who do not respect individual sovereignty, have violated this universal law, and as a result their territories must inevitably be invaded by those cultures whom they are abusing or violating in order to preserve their national security. And it also goes without saying that the Dulce Empire has earned the wrath of Americans due to the unspeakable atrocities being carried out there against our own people. I absolutely recommend that a full-scale congressionally backed invasion and takeover of the Dulce base and its peripheral facilities would be fully justified, and the sooner the better. After all, didn't we as American citizens pay for the underground empire with our own tax dollars? Once all resistance within the Dulce facility is smashed and its captives are liberated, and after all activities there are brought under full congressional oversight, those agents operating within this facility should be tried and prosecuted by due process of law, be they human or alien, and if not executed or imprisoned they should be banished from the planet until they can prove that they are able to respect human individuality and freedom. We ourselves must learn the same lesson, since it was in most cases men who violated our trust and constitutional sovereignty as the United States citizens, and in fact as world citizens, who have betrayed us to these alien parasites by opening up the door for them to come in many cases in order to facilitate their own desires to dominate their fellow human beings. When the Dulce base is conquered and subdued, we should commence to liberate other oppressed areas within the underground network. Let us remember however that, aside from assisting in their liberation, we as Americans or world citizens should not, in our retaliatory actions against invasive subterranean centers, violate the territories or sovereignty of other interior dwellers who have not participated in the draconian-backed abductions and attacks against the citizens of America and of the world. Chapter 20. Special Forces, Defenders of Planet Earth? The mysterious insider Commander X related the following information in one of his numerous reports. In the revised September 1959 edition of the Effects of Atomic Weapons, prepared for and in cooperation with the United States Department of Defense and the United States Atomic Energy Commission, under the direction of the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, we read about how complete underground placement of bases is desirable. On page 382, there are apparently no fundamental difficulties in construction and operating underground various types of important facilities. Such facilities may be placed in a suitable existing miner or site may be excavated for the purpose. In reference to the Delta Force, which is believed to supply security for above top-secret projects involving interaction with the aliens, Greys, etc., this government insider states, the Delta Group have been seen within the intelligence support activity with badges which have a black triangle on a red background. Delta is the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. It is the form of a triangle, and figures prominently in certain Masonic signs. Each base has its own symbol. The Dulce base symbol is a triangle with the Greek letter tau, T, within it, and then the symbol is inverted, so the triangle points down. The insignia of a triangle and three lateral lines has been seen on saucer transport craft, the trilateral symbol. Other symbols mark landing sites and alien craft. On January 10, 1989, former Naval Petty Officer William Cooper posted the following statement on a computer network devoted to the investigation of paranormal events, which detailed still further information about the Delta Forces. Take note that the Deltas, according to William Cooper, John Lear and Thomas E. Costello, had played a major part in the so-called Dulce Wars, which began in 1979. The following information was extracted from a rather long treatise transcript conversation between an individual and another who was assigned to Delta Security. 01. Delta Security has a lot to do with intra-service projects. 02. The trilateral insignia, alien, is valid and has been used to mark equipment. 03. The whole thing is grim and won't get any better. 04. The trilateral insignia has been seen on a disc at Edwards F., California and Area 51 in Nevada. 05. There is a hangar at Edwards referred to as the Delta Hangar. 06. The Delta Hangar is on the north base at Edwards. 07. You need a special badge to get near it. It is a red badge with a black triangle on the face of it and personal information on the back. 08. Disc in hangar at Edwards described as having insignia on the underside and on the top. It was about 50 single quote in diameter, appearing like tarnished silver, about 15 to 18 feet thick. There were what looked like windows around the raised portion that were mostly described as rectangular. There was a groove around the disc about 4 feet from the edge all the way around. There was an area on the bottom that looked like vents or louvers. 09. When people assigned to Delta would break down and cry for no apparent reason, you would never see them again. 10. Apparently, the NRO National Recon Organization recruits for Delta out of Fort Carson, Colorado. 11. Just about everyone assigned to Delta are orphans, have no relatives, etc. 12. There are bounty hunters connected with Dreamland. 13. If you work at Dreamland and go on leave or are not back on time, they send bounty hunters after you. That's where the visitors live. There is an underground facility. 14. Area 51 is at Groom Lake in Nevada. The discs are flown there. 15. One of the craft looked like an upside-down diamond. 16. There is a radiation hazard apparent when some of the craft fly. 17. No one stays at Dreamland for more than a few months. 18. Everything is way out of control. From his apparent though guarded vantage point within the intelligence community, Commander X claims to be privy to much deep-level inside information. One of the many reports that has crossed his desk involved the experience of a woman who was abducted and taken over 1,000 miles to the underground facility below Dulce, New Mexico. One woman I have spoken with was abducted from the roof of a New York City apartment building and apparently held underground at the Dulce facility. She was taken to a cabin in the desert which was being used as a camouflaged entrance to the alien base. She was eventually escorted to the laboratories to be used as a test subject, but at the last minute managed to escape thanks to the aid of one of the Nordic type, tall aliens, who befriended her and showed her a secret way out, down an unguarded shaft. Back in the desert, she was rescued by members of the Air Force Blue Berets, and eventually flown back to Manhattan. During a debriefing session with the military, she was warned to remain silent about her experiences. Anyone hearing such a bizarre tale would certainly think she had gone insane. It was inferred she could be committed to a mental institution at any time should she refuse to go along with the cover-up conspiracy, which she was told was being conducted for the sake of the country, and the sake of the world. If you believe that excuse, then I have some nice beachfront property on Mercury that you might be interested in. Brenton, Chapter 21. Probing deeper into the Dulce enigma. The following information on subsurface anomalies and the Dulce base was compiled by researcher and explorer John Rhodes. Legends from different parts of the globe all tell of an underworld inhabited by mystical beings of varied forms. I believe that the reptilian race still resides to this day underground, hidden away in the dark crevices of the earth and in the depths of the oceans. The evidence supporting this proclamation is also available through recent reports and historical documentation. By the early 1960s, a subterranean nuclear blast occurred about 30 miles southwest of Dulce, New Mexico, right off the United States 64. This nuclear blast was conducted under the umbrella of Project Plowshare, and was named Gas Buggy. It has recently been alleged that this particular subsurface nuclear blast was used to create a hollowed-out chute or chimney for development of a substation for a super-secret tunnel system attached to an underground Black Book project base. According to the infamous Thomas Costello, a former Dulce base security technician, this particular underworld city is a highly secret base operated by humans as well as reptilian aliens and their worker caste, the commonly encountered Greys. It is here, apparently, that a multitude of experimentation projects are carried out. Primarily genetic experiments on kidnapped men, women, and children. There are a myriad of other specialty science projects taking place at the Dulce base including, but not limited to, atomic manipulation, cloning, studies of the human aura, advanced mind control applications, animal-slash-human crossbreeding, visual and audio wiretapping, the list goes on. Dulce, New Mexico is a strange place indeed. It's a sleepy little town perched upon the Archuleta Mesa, just south of the Colorado border in northern New Mexico. Tourists passing through sometimes see little more life in the town other than that of a scruffy dog lazily spread out alongside of the dirt road. Some claim that upon entering the town, black vehicles with heavily tinted windows tailgate them until they are outside the city limits and heading out of Dodge. In addition, several other sources, who wish to remain nameless, reported oddities in their work with Operation Plowshare during the 1960s. The project was created under the guise of the use of atomic bombs during peacetime, and forged ahead under the umbrella of natural gas exploration. In fact, Several of these multi-kiloton blasts were used as a rapid way of developing huge subsurface chambers for facility development. It is reported that the technology to clean radiation is available and already in use for such projects. When I lectured on Friday, August 13 of 1993 in Las Vegas, I made public, for the first time ever, the floor plans to levels 1 and 6 of the Dulce base. These floor plans were reproduced from the originals that were handed to Thomas Costello's friend. This friend did not previously release the floor plans because they were being used as a verification device to the claims of abductees that say they were there. To date, the originals have verified and disproved many stories circulating the field of ufology. This friend of Thomas Costello's, however, believes that it is time to begin to reveal the missing pieces. The Dulce base floor plan was illustrated as per the originals by Thomas Costello, and I released it during my lecture in Las Vegas, Nevada. Its layout, when inspected carefully, appears to be extremely strategically planned. From a vertical viewpoint, it resembles a wheel with a central hub and corridors radiating outwards like spokes. This hub is the focal point of the entire base. It is surrounded by central security and extends through all levels of the base. I believe this core to be the Achilles heel of the entire facility. It probably contains fiber optic communications and power lines. This would justify its highly guarded and central location, as well as explain its vertical continuation through all levels. With all communication lines and power lines focused towards the hub, it is possible that any one level could be completely locked down by its own security or the security hubs from either above or below its own level. This would provide maximum control over the entire facility. The spokes, or corridors radiating away from the central hub, lead to numerous other labs in 5 different directions. Connect the spokes in a pentagon as revealed in its design. From above, this base resembles the layout of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., complete with halls, walls and military insignias. Since we do not have the exact heading on its corridors, magnetic alignments are impossible to determine. When viewed laterally, its appearance takes on the look of a tree with a trunk at its center and its flowers extending outwards like the branches. If this is a facility of science, then one could easily say that its lateral appearance is like that of the tree of knowledge. Note, the original Hebrew word for the tree of knowledge is Dulce, or cunning. It was the tree where, according to Judeo-Christian accounts, the original serpent convinced Eve to take part in a rebellion against the Almighty by promising her an Adam godhood. By accepting this false gospel of self-deification, so Genesis claims, Eve and her husband, who was with her at the time, joined in the rebellion. Since they saw themselves as potential gods, they no longer needed to depend on the Almighty as their source, and once the flow from the source was broken, the perfection that the world once knew was destroyed, as humankind, and in fact all of nature, began to turn wild. In light of all of this, could the Dulce base be the modern tree of knowledge, cunning, where the seed of the serpent and the seed of Eve have once again met in an unholy alliance, yet in a much more sophisticated form? In this case, the serpent would be the grace, and the forbidden fruit would be the occult technology that is being offered by these demon-possessed beings to humans, elite, who are intent on playing God over their fellow man. Could it be that the Adonich scenario never ended, but instead has been and will keep on repeating itself over and over until the seed of Eve once and for all say enough is enough, and basically tell the serpent exactly where it can go? Branton. Was this purposely designed this way, or does it just happen to be a coincidence? The overall design of this facility reminds one of a multi-stacked subterranean Hopi Indian kiva. Although I believe that it's somewhat of a disservice to the Hopi to even be spoken of in association with a cave of horrors like the Dulce base, its similarity in design should not be forgotten. As cultures around the world tend to bring their own styles of architecture with them during periods of migration, so perhaps did the advanced civilization that originally built the Dulce base. If the reptilian influence over man is as great as archaic documentation and myth would have one believe, then there have to be other subterranean dwellings similar to this in other locations. Note, the following are some additional facts and comments concerning the late Thomas Edwin Costello, which are not mentioned elsewhere in this work. These have been paraphrased from the research files of John Rhodes. Branton, in 1961, Costello was a young sergeant stationed at Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas, Nevada. His job was as a military photographer with a top-secret clearance. He later transferred to West Virginia, where he trained in advanced intelligence photography. He worked inside an undisclosed underground installation, and due to the nature of his new assignment his clearance was upgraded to TS4. He remained with the Air Force as a photographer until 1971, at which time he was offered a job with Rand Corporation as a security technician. And so he moved to California, where Rand had a major facility, and his security clearance was upgraded to Ultra 3. The following year he met a woman named Kathy. They married and had a son, Eric. In 1977 Thomas was transferred to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where his pay was raised significantly and his security clearance was again upgraded. This time to Ultra 7. His new job was as a photo security specialist in the Dulce installation, where his job specification was to maintain, align and calibrate video monitoring cameras throughout the underground complex and to escort visitors to their destinations. Once arriving in Dulce, Thomas and several other new recruits attended a mandatory meeting where they were introduced to the big lie, that the subjects being used for genetic experiments were hopelessly insane and the research is for medical and humane purposes. Beyond that, all questions were to be asked on a need-to-know basis. The briefing ended with severe threats of punishment for being caught talking to any of the insane or engaging in conversations with others not directly involved with one's current task. Venturing outside the boundaries of one's own work area without reason was also forbidden and, most of all, discussing the existence of the joint alien/U.S. government base to any outsider would generate severe and, if necessary, deadly repercussions. Thomas did his job as his superiors demanded. At first his encounters with actual gray and reptilian beings in the base were exhilarating, but soon he became acutely aware that all was not what it appeared to be. Thomas slowly began to sense that there was an underlying current of tension existing between some of the personnel and himself. Once in a while he would walk around the corner, interrupting serious discussions between co-workers and, as Thomas was a security officer, these talks would die off into a short murmur and individuals would part company. One particular part of his job was to go into various areas of the base and align the security monitoring cameras when it was necessary. This afforded him the opportunity to venture out and witness things that would stagger the imagination. Later he was to report seeing laboratories that investigated the following: auric energy fields of humans, astral or spirit body voyaging and manipulation, sea studies, advanced mind control analysis and application, human brain memory recognition, acquisition, and transfer, matter manipulation, human/alien embryonic cloning, rapid human body replicating by use of energy/matter transfer, complete with an individual's memory from the computer memory banks, and other scientific advances. Once in a while Thomas would see some of the horrifying genetic creations that were housed in separate sections of the base. These, he knew, couldn't have had anything to do with mental illness or health research. Thomas didn't want to look any further. For every time he discovered more pieces to this underground maze, it became more and more overwhelming to accept. His curious mind, however, implored him to search for the truth regardless of his own desire to turn away in horror. One day, Thomas was approached by another employee who ushered him into a side hallway. Here he was approached by two other gentlemen that whispered the most horrifying words. The men, women and children that were said to be mentally retarded were, in fact, heavily sedated victims of abduction. He warned the men that their words and actions could get them in big trouble if he were to turn them in. At this, one man told Thomas that they were all observing him and noticed that he too was uncomfortable with what he was witnessing. They knew that Thomas had a conscience and they knew they had a friend. They were right. Thomas didn't turn them into his commanders. Instead, he made the dangerous decision to quietly speak with one of the caged humans in an area nicknamed Nightmare Hall. Through their drug-induced state, he asked their name and their hometown. Thomas discreetly investigated the claim of this insane human during his weekends out of the facility. He discovered through his search that the person had been declared missing in their hometown after vanishing suddenly, leaving behind their traumatized families, who followed dead ends and trailed flyers. Soon he discovered that many of the hundreds, perhaps thousands of men, women and children from all areas of the world were actually listed as missing or unexplained disappearances. Thomas knew he was in over his head, and so were several of his co-workers. All he could do, until somehow the situation changed, was to be alert and extremely guarded with his thoughts. The gray alien's telepathic capabilities allowed them to read the minds of those around them, and if he revealed his intense anger, it would be all over for him and his new friends. In 1978, tensions within the Dulce base were extremely heightened. several security and lab technicians began to sabotage the genetic experiments. Increasingly frail nerves and paranoia finally erupted into what is commonly referred to as the Dulce Wars. It was a literal battle between the reptilians and the humans for the control of the Dulce base. It was the reptilians more than the humans that were pushing the big lie, and insisted on using humans in their experiments, and those who did not survive the experiments were used as sources for the liquid protein tanks which fed both embryonic gray fetuses as well as full-grown grays, as a source of nourishment. The initial Dulce War conflict began on level 3. No one is exactly sure how it started, but we do know through Thomas' account that it involved the base security forces armed with beam weapons known as flash guns, machine gun-toting U.S. military personnel, and the gray alien species who had apparently tried to turn the base security forces and the United States military forces against each other. Branton. When the smoke cleared, 68 humans had been killed, 22 were completely vaporized and 19 escaped via the tunnels. 7 were recaptured and 12 remain in hiding to this day. Thomas returned to his post awaiting the planning of his own escape. Note, it is not known just exactly how many Greys were killed in the conflict, but it is obvious that the human security personnel were far outnumbered by the aliens since literally thousands of Greys worked in the lower levels of the Dulce base, according to Costello. There are indications that the spark may have occurred when many of the scientists within the lower levels, who had learned about the grand deception of the aliens and their lies concerning the abductees, were captured by the reptilians and apparently confined deep within peripheral bases underneath the Ute Mountains of SE Colorado and SW Utah. A few others apparently escaped and told those in the upper levels what was happening below. The Greys/reptiloids could not afford to let escape the fact that they had violated the treaty with MJ-12, and in fact had been violating it all along with no intention whatsoever to keep it. They had hoped that the humans would not become wise to their Trojan horse operation until they were able to infiltrate the planet more completely. At least 100 special forces were sent in by superiors who were ignorant of the whole picture in an effort to rescue the scientists and maintain order and control of the base. However, the aliens, who far outnumbered and out-teched the human forces, managed to kill 66-68 of them. Branton. In 1979, the intense pressure that was brought upon Thomas in his job finally made him break the code of silence. He told his best friend, by a hand-passed note, that he was working in a subsurface, huge installation outside of Dulce, New Mexico. He told his friend that he was working side by side with gray aliens that consider themselves native Terrans, and that the upside-down black triangle with the inverted gold-colored T inside it was the insignia of the project. Thomas knew that he had to leave the job for his own peace of mind. However, now that he knew the truth about the abductees being held below, it would be almost impossible to live a normal life. He would always be under observation and threat until the day he died. He also was aware of the fact that old age may not be his downfall. His demise could easily be expedited by certain individuals. After one of his weekends away from the facility, he decided to return to work. This time through one of the less guarded air shafts, unannounced and into the base by way of secret passages. Once inside, he proceeded to appear as if he was working his normal duties while taking charge of every thought as he passed by Greys. During this time inside the base, he removed still photographs of the facility and treaties signed, with authentic signatures, between California Governor Ronald Reagan, several other individuals and the Greys. Thomas also managed to retrieve a 7-minute black and white surveillance video of genetic experiments, caged humans, Greys, as well as schematics of alien devices and complex genetic formulas. These items, he felt, were not only his chance to a seat at the bargaining table when the need arose, but also they were things that the public needed to know about. He made copies of the films, photos and paperwork, packed several packages, and instructed several different people who he trusted explicitly to bury or hide them until the right time. He was then made aware through certain sources that his wife, Kathy, and son, Eric, had been forcibly taken from their home to an undisclosed underground facility for safe holding until he decided to return with the items. At this point, he knew that even if he did return everything to the Dulce commanders, that his wife and son were probably never going to be the same again if returned at all after being manipulated by aggressive mind control. He also knew that he and his family would most definitely become permanently missing due to some tragic accident. Thomas was at zero option. He quickly dissolved into a lonely life on the run. From state to state, border to border, motels to sofas. always looking behind him and trying his best to look ahead. Further notes from John Rhodes. During this initial period of evasion, Thomas was able to relay quite a bit of information about what was happening behind the scenes and what plans were being made by the government, that is, the fascist corporate elements within the executive intelligence industrial government such as the NSA's, MAGI and Aquarius agencies, which had re-established the collaboration 2 years following the cessation of official human interaction following the Dulce Wars. Branton and the Greys. Some of it has been withheld by his closest friends as a control device in order to authenticate or invalidate some abductees' stories and researchers' findings. Believe me, there are some very well-known people who make a living from selling this type of information, and they have been lying through their teeth about their experiences. Note, are some of these false accounts given within this volume? I do not know, and as I stated at the beginning of this work, I am not excluding any information source, although I may have my own opinions on certain information such as with the Phoenix Project research. However, I have decided to throw it all out on the table for all to see, and will allow the future to make its own judgments. Even if one or a few of the accounts are misleading, the odds that all of the combined accounts within this volume are false would defy the laws of probability. Perhaps the only way to tell for certain would be to do as the unsung hero Paul Bennewitz suggested, that is to make a full-scale military assault on the base, conquer the aliens whether they be genetic creations or true aliens or both, and bring all activities there under full congressional oversight. I'm sure that there will be no lack of potential military recruits for this type of assault. After all, tens of thousands of young American men have in the past been sent off to die to protect CIA drug-running operations in the Golden Triangle, to give their lives for the United Nations New World Order, or in wars that were never meant to be won. I should however in all fairness state that in the Korean and Vietnamese wars there was a very real threat in the form of communism, and many young men bravely fought and died in the defense of freedom. However, their patriotism and hopes of victory were often sabotaged by communist-sympathizing socialist UN officials, or by covert drug operations, or other hidden agendas. In other words, if we have fought wars in the past against the tentacles of the beast, so to speak, then I see no reason why potential recruits would shy away from a battle against the head of the beast itself, especially when we consider that such a battle or war might ultimately have galactic ramifications. One of the problems with the Dulce Wars was that only 100 special forces with high-level security clearances were unknowingly sent into a base inhabited by over 18,000 Greys. 34 of these reportedly survived the firefight, which considering the opposition was a very good survival rate. However, with the latest developments in military technology, with the current civilian intelligence on the base, which exists now thanks to Paul Bennewitz and others, and with the millions of American Christian patriots who would no doubt be willing and ready to wage a holy war against the entrenched draconian collectivist forces on Earth, the next military assault on the Dulce base will not be so one-sided. Branton P. Thomas Costello hopes that you find this information interesting and noteworthy. We feel that it is imperative to release more information because of the stepped-up abduction activities. If you should ever be inquisitive enough to try and do a field investigation of Dulce yourself, then you had better prepare and prepare well. Do not treat this information lightly. Thomas Costello, the former Dulce base security technical officer and a personal friend of TUA's team members, may have given his life in order that someday the world may see the truth about the existence of the Dulce facility in which he worked. Thomas has not made regular visits to any of his known contacts for quite some time. Some are fearing the worst. Elsewhere within the manuscript released by John Rhodes, from which we have just quoted, we read the following: obviously, if these snake people or reptilians really did once live amongst the Homo sapiens population, they have gone to extreme measures not to be revealed since they went into hiding. However, our progression has been carefully monitored by the elusive reptilian race that lives within the cavernous Earth itself. Legends from different parts of the globe all tell of an underworld inhabited by mystical beings of varied forms. I believe that the reptilian race still resides to this day underground, hidden away in the dark crevices of the Earth and in the depths of the oceans. The evidence supporting this proclamation is also available through recent reports and historical documentation. If you really want to see the big show, don't look above your head, look below your feet. Chapter 22. Mystery Maverick Jim McConville takes on the Dulce Bennewitz enigma. The following document, among others, originated from the United States intelligence worker who has been missing for quite some time. Concerned family members discovered this document in a locker in which the missing intelligence officer apparently kept some of his papers. This document as well as others in his possession may have had some connection with his disappearance, although exactly what connection this might be, is uncertain. Copies of this and other documents eventually ended up in the hands of several researchers as a result of one investigator who was approached by the family of the missing agent and given the documents. This source stated that this family was extremely disturbed not only about the disappearance, but also about the nature of the documents themselves and the role they may have played in connection with the disappearance. In the copy of the document which is quoted here, some annotations were made. These seem to have been corrections on various points related in the miss made by Paul Benoist himself. These corrections will be indicated by an asterisk, summary of notes taken by Jim McCampbell concerning telephone interviews with Dr. Paul F. Benoist. This is Jim McCampbell making a recording of a remarkable episode on July 13, 1984. It is to do with a UFO base, cattle mutilations, advanced weaponry, contact with aliens, etc. The episode began about a week ago when I received a little semi-annual periodical titled Stigmata. It is number 21, the first half of 1984. This little bulletin is prepared by Thomas Adams at P.O. Box 1994, Paris, Texas 75460. Tom Adams is the ex-husband of Krista Tilton, by the way. Brenton, he has a rather lengthy article. One finds point of interest on page 9, and I suppose the only way to pursue this is to read what he has here as it is fundamental to the entire story. Quoting, in May of 1980 a most interesting event occurred in northern New Mexico. An event similar in many respects to the Doherty case. A mother and her young son were driving on a rural highway near Cimarron, New Mexico. They observed two or more craft, and as Judy Doherty did, they observed a calf being abducted. Both observers were themselves abducted and taken on separate craft to what was apparently an underground installation, where the woman witnessed the mutilation of the calf. Asterisk woman witnessed mutilation in the field, dead animal taken with them. It has been alleged that she also observed a vat containing unidentified asterisk cattle body parts floating in a liquid, and another vat containing the body of a male human. The woman was subjected to an examination, and it has been further alleged that small metallic objects were implanted into her body as well as into her son's body. More than one source has informed us that CAT scans have confirmed the presence of these implants. Paul Benoist, president of his own scientific company in Albuquerque and an investigator with the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, has been the principal investigator of the case. Interviewed in his office in April 1983, Benoist reports that through regressive hypnosis of the mother and child and his own follow-up investigation, including communications received via his computer terminal, which ostensibly is from a UFO-related source, he was able to determine the location of the underground facility, a kilometer underground beneath the Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation near Dulce, New Mexico. Since 1976, one of the areas hardest hit by mutilations coincidentally or whatever. The mother and son, by the way, were returned back to their car that night. Since the incident, they have suffered repeated trauma and difficulties as they attempt to recover from the episode. We pass this along because the account is, of course, most crucial if true, but we are not in a position to confirm the alleged findings. Hopefully, more information regarding this incident will be heard in the near future. We can only consider such reports while continuing to seek the evidence to refute or confirm. Unquoting. That's the end of this remarkable quotation from Stigmata. I got in touch with Dr. Benoist by telephone and indicated that I had seen this reference to him and his work and I wanted to find out whether he was being misrepresented or whatever. It is rather mind-boggling, and here is the substance of that telephone conversation. He is a physicist and he started 4 years ago to determine in his own mind whether UFOs exist or do not, and he has gotten much more deeply involved than he ever intended. IT has caused him a great deal of trouble from the government intelligence groups. He has pictures from the location. He went with a highway patrol officer and they saw a UFO take off from the mesa at the location. He obtained photographs, and what he called launch ships were 330 feet long and 130 feet across. The cattle rancher named Gomez, and he went back to this location, which is a mesa, and saw a surveillance vehicle which was about 5 feet by 10 feet, like a satellite, he said. He had been using a Polaroid camera and then got a Hasselblad to produce much better pictures. He set up a monitoring station and observed that UFOs are all over the area. He has been dealing heavily with a Major Edwards, somebody, Security commander who was with Monzano Security and 2. My wife and I of them saw 4 objects outside of a nuclear warhead storage area at a range of about 2,500 feet and obtained movies of them. He now has about 6,000 feet of movie footage, of which 5,000 feet is in Super 8. The objects have the ability to cloak, that's the word, spells cloak like cloak and dagger, like cover up, and he says that they can cause themselves to go invisible by a field that cause the light waves to bend around the object and that one sees the sky behind them. He confirmed the fact that the woman was picked up when she accidentally observed the calf being abducted. He has paid for pathology work and medical doctor work. The pathologist is a former head of the microbiology department of New Mexico University. They have done CAT scans to show that the woman and her son did in fact have implants in their bodies. We confirmed the woman, not her son. She has a vaginal disease like Streptococcus bulbi, and tried many antibodies to destroy the bacteria. That it has survived off the antibodies themselves. The aliens keep hassling her. Still true to date. Paul kept the woman and her mother at his house and the UFOs were flying overhead constantly. There is no ESP involved, but IT is just plain physics. They beam down. They send a beam down, not beam down. They can communicate through this beam. She picked up their transmissions. He devised a means of communication based upon her alphabet code. 1 is equal to no and 2 being single quote yes. Through this code he has been able to talk to the aliens. He then computerized a system that would reject extraneous inputs. He said that they can be very threatening and malevolent. He then told the O's. I of the Air Force and he has been requested to give several presentations to high-level Air Force people and briefings on the subject, wing-level command and many others including this fellow Edwards. And he took a helicopter to the site. No, twice to site minus first by OC agent, second by a Colonel Carpenter. It turned out that the wing commander, after a presentation that this fellow made, then took a helicopter to the site and made photographs.